Please be seated. Thank you very much, everyone. So, welcome to today's full council meeting, and in particular, welcome to members of the public who are attending in the public gallery and those watching the meeting via our YouTube channel. For those in the building, I would like to draw your attention to the emergency evacuation procedure. Please leave the chamber by the nearest exit and congregate by the cathedral. Can I remind attendees to turn off their mobile phones or make sure they're set to silent mode to avoid interrupting the meeting? As with any council meeting, please treat each other with due courtesy, tolerance and respect. As I'm sure you all know, we are currently in the holy month of Ramadan, and I'd like to take this opportunity to wish everyone Ramadan Mubarak, happy Ramadan. Many of our Muslim councillors will be observing Ramadan, so please note that colleagues may leave the meeting for prayers just before 6:11 p.m. and will return after they've participated in iftar. And also, just to note, Councillor Malik has very generously provided dates for all members in their group rooms during recess later this evening. Thank you very much, Councillor Malik. Have you put some in the Lord Mayor's parlour as well? I think so. Thank you very much. So agenda item 2 is apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillors Freeman, Goggin and Morris. Are there any other apologies? Agenda item 3 is declarations of interest. Please can I ask whether any councillors have any interest to declare regarding the items on today's agenda?
Yes, thank you.
Councillor Hucker.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm a non-executive director of Bristol Waste, so that's relevant to agenda item 9 and 12.
Thank you very much. Anything else? Thank you. Agenda item 4 is minutes of the previous meeting. I move that the minutes of the previous meeting of full council held on the 25th of February 2025 be agreed as a correct record. Do I have a seconder?
Lord Mayor, I stand to second the minutes and I reserve my remarks.
Thank you very much for that. So can I take it that the minutes are agreed? I think that's a resounding aye. Thank you very much. So agenda item 5 is Lord Mayor's business, and I'd just like to invite members to sign Ramadan cards to show our support as corporate parents for our hard-working Muslim foster carers. And these cards will be available in the conference hall during the adjournment, which is expected around about 7:30. So sign a card and then go and grab some dates. Thank you very much indeed. So now we'll move on to public forum. 30 minutes will be allowed for this item, which is split into 15 minutes for petitions and statements and 15 minutes for questions. Details of the petitions, statements and questions received have been published on our website, and I'll go through the list, calling on those who have indicated they plan to attend the meeting. Speakers are asked to pay attention to the traffic lights on the dais and to start to wrap up when the lights turn to amber. Now, there were no public forum petitions received for this meeting. We did, however, receive a total of 26 public statements, and a list will be displayed on the screen. 12 members of the public indicated that they plan to attend and speak to their statements, and they are displayed on the screen, and we'll run through those statements in order. I'll invite each person to speak for 1 minute. Please summarise your statement and bear in mind that they were published for councillors and the public to read in advance of the meeting. So firstly, do we have Chris Honour? Okay, let's move on to public statement number 4, Angela Howe. Is Angela Howe here? Angela, you've got 1 minute to talk about flooding prevention at Froome Terrace.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's on. I beg your pardon, everyone. Flooding of Froome Terrace. I'm Angie Howe, one of 3 gully cleaners and residents at Froome Terrace. Clearing drains is the council's responsibility. We shouldn't have to do it after heavy rains. At 76, I'm too old and too short to wade in 2 foot of filthy water. Prevention elevates damage. Costs and health. The Sapphire Company were called out 5 times. They have to travel up from Bournemouth, which cannot be cheap. We need regular maintenance and cleaning of gullies, including check wrongly positioned gullies, which makes them redundant, maintain overhanging trees from Grove Woods, install proper storm gate to the terrace to protect our properties, maintain Duchess Lake, burst banks added to the deluge down Broom Hill. Council action...
Angela, I'm sorry, you've had your 1 minute now. Do you just want to make one final sentence and then we'll wrap it up so other people can have a chance?
Thank you. Council action needed now, preventing possible future flooding. We residents have done as much as we possibly can do, so it's over to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Public statement number 5. Is Jeffrey Allen here, please? Jeffrey Allen, yes. And Jeffrey, you have 1 minute to endorse the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty.
Yes, thank you. I asked this council to endorse this fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. This is an international initiative of the countries of the global south to shift leadership in tackling the climate crisis away from the most polluting countries. It aims to build a united force against the dominance of the fossil fuel industry and towards a just transition. It would involve no financial outlay by this council, yet would underline Bristol's firm stand on climate and nature. As a precedent, the 1997 Landmines Treaty started out in a similar way, supported by local authorities before gaining international recognition. Support so far includes 16 governments, many others, including Bristol's twin city of Bordeaux and 13 other local UK authorities. This council's support would help promote, pressure the government to endorse the treaty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Public statement number 6, Andrew Payton. Is Andrew Payton here? Andrew? Yes, he is. So, Andrew, you've got a minute on Bristol Zoo Gardens planning application.
Thank you. As you know, despite widespread public opposition, this application for 196 luxury homes was granted. There's a judicial review that has been granted for May with concerns about the processes and the methods used to assess diversity, biodiversity, space and carbon emissions. If successful in any of these, this can be deemed unlawful and should prompt the council to reconsider its decision. It's a great opportunity for the council and the zoo to engage in a meaningful dialogue with the community and find a more sensitive solution for Bristol Zoo Gardens, which has been visited by 90 million people in the last 186 years. So please, I hope this council will not squander this opportunity if it arises.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Public statement number 9 from Matt Sanders on the Busgate condemned by tribunal. Matt, you've got a minute, please.
Hi, need my glasses. The Cumberland Road Busgate has issued 65,000 penalty charge notices, and I've helped some of its victims with the appeals to the Traffic Penalty Tribunal. I won the appeals for drivers who visited the SS Great Britain and Bristol Marina due to inadequate signage on those routes, but the council won most appeals relating to drivers who came from Cumberland Basin. Advance warning signs on that route all have fatal flaws, but the adjudicators mainly ignored those defects and only considered the signs at the Busgate itself, which they deemed to be adequate. Highways officers then pretended that this approval confirmed that all signage was okay, which is not true. But adjudicator Robinson has now ruled that due to inadequate signage at Cumberland Basin, the Busgate is not enforceable after all. Most tribunal decisions are only 1 or 2 pages long. Adjudicator Robinson has filled 10 pages with criticisms of the Busgate signage and its fundamental design. This confirms what I've been saying all along, and the council officers who claimed everything is fine have been lying to everybody. 10 pages.
Matt, you're well over time now, I'm afraid. Thank you very much for your contribution. So we'll now move on to public statement number 10 from Tiemann Sevgen on Support Renters' Rights Bill.
Dear Council, I'm Teoman Sevgen, a resident of the Clifton Ward, and here today on behalf of the University of Bristol Students' Union. As many of you are aware, we are facing a chronic shortage of housing nationwide, which Bristol is not an outlier of. And students are affected just as much as other residents of the city. The university cohort contributes close to £2 billion to our local economy, yet we remain the most vulnerable when it comes to housing policy. But fear not, I'm not here today to ask for more building unpopular developments, but ask for your support in writing. Bristol City Council recently introduced and approved a symbolic motion calling for ceasefire in Gaza. And similarly, we encourage the council to introduce a similar motion indicating their cross-party support for the upcoming Renters' Rights Bill in Parliament, which the student union already actively campaigns for. Doing so will send a positive message to our 40,000-strong electoral cohort ahead of the local elections in May. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And apologies if I butchered your surname there. Let's move on to public statement 12. Meg Smith. Is Meg Smith here? Thank you, Meg. And this is on the South Bristol Liberal neighbourhood. 1 minute, please.
So I'd like to say roll out the South Bristol livable neighbourhood, because it's only when it's going to roll out will the residents really see what it's about. We've seen it in East Bristol. We've seen that when it was rolled out, the impact on the residents, and they've had really good fighting force coming out against it. And we need that to happen in South Bristol. 1,800 people have given their opinion on it. When it happens, that they will see that the road closures, the planters, the bus gates are not there for the people. In fact, it's a much bigger agenda. It's all under net zero. It all goes back to Agenda 2130, sustainable development, that goes back to the Earth Summit in 1992. It's under C40 Cities International Organisation by Boris Johnson, and is now headed, the C40 Cities is headed by Sadiq Khan. So this is a global initiative. It's not grassroots, it's global, and everybody needs to know what's happening around the global level at this time, and not see it as a local grassroots. This is under, same as 15-minute cities, it's livable neighbourhoods, it's low traffic neighbourhoods, it's not there, it's not zero.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to public statement 19 from David Redgewell on the bus service improvement plan. David, you've got 1 minute, please.
So we are making some progress, but I want to just warn, on the 3rd of April, the contractor for Westlink will change from EZEC Medical Services, which has been the failing contractor, to another company called Thames Valley Transport of Slough. Now, obviously, where you've got those services, you need to be monitoring very carefully. The staff are being trooped over. That's in the Whitchurch Ward, Windmill Hill Ward, areas around North Bristol, Brislington, Keynsham, where they actually got these Westlink services instead of mainline buses. So that's the first point. The second point I want to make is there's quite a lot of money sitting in the Wecker pot with North Somerset, £17 million. We need to be careful how we spend that. We've only got another 6 months to spend it, and we want to make sure that goes into bus services. Ed's done a good job with Tim Rippington in the 3 new services we've got now, but we need to look at East Bristol Corridor in the area around Hillfields, Kingswood, and that area, 19 and 17 routes, where there are still severe difficulties in public transport in the evenings particularly, and also to look at night buses.
Thank you,
final point
David.
is we should get on and build the CRTS schemes like the Park Street.
Thank you very much, David. That's great. Thank you. Public statement number 22 is Michael Potts here. Michael, you've got 1 minute on your objection to the busgate proposal for Park Street.
Hi, thank you. My name is Michael Potts, and I own Mrs. Potts Chocolate House up on Park Street. I represent a group of traders that are concerned about the busgate proposal. We're called Save Park Street. We believe that the proposal should not proceed on the following basis. 1, most Bristolians oppose the idea. This is based on responses from Facebook, Bristol Live, and a survey conducted by Bristol Bid. 2, the proposed scheme will not achieve the proposed benefits that can be measured reliably. The major concern is the grossly misleading statements that this proposal will increase economic activity by 28.5%, when evidence suggests that removing traffic from the high street will have a devastating consequence. A rebuttal of this claim, along with other proposed benefits, is detailed in this submission. 3rd and finally, at a cost of £15 million to taxpayers, we believe the money can be better spent if redirected back to Wecker to be used for a number of things that the council have cut funds for. We want to make sure this submission has been received and read, because we want to ensure that all parties are aware of the relevant facts on this proposal, as opposed to the ideological beliefs and views that have been put forward by this council.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Next is public statement 23. Is Melissa Topping here? Melissa? Yep. So Melissa, you've got 1 minute on the East Bristol Liberal neighbourhood.
Thank you.
Melissa, if you want to sit down, that's absolutely fine if you're more comfortable.
This project suffers from critical failures. Residents, businesses, especially those with disabilities and low incomes, were excluded from meaningful consultation, violating the Equalities Act 2010. The Equalities Impact Assessment is inadequate, ignoring local disability groups and low-income voices. Key decisions were made without recorded meetings, demonstrating a lack of accountability. Many in East Bristol rely on vehicles for work, a reality ignored by this scheme. Alternative options are insufficient. Consultation was primarily online and in English, with false claims of disability engagement. We demand the withdrawal of the East Bristol livable neighbourhood in its current form, remove the roadblocks and busgate, re-engage with all stakeholders transparently, consult local disability and elderly groups, provide resources for Lawrence Hill residents and businesses, develop future traffic calming measures collaboratively with residents, businesses, and Lawrence Hill Neighbourhood Forum.
Okay, Melissa, I'm going to stop you there. Thank you very
without
much indeed.
disproportionate
Let's
harm.
move on to public
Include
statement.
emergency
Your
services
time
in
is up,
all
I'm afraid.
stages.
You're
We need safe,
eating into other
usable
people's time.
streets for all, not just a
Public
select
statement
few.
24, Caroline Dunn, please. Is Caroline Dunn here? Thank you very much. Caroline Dunn, you've got 1 minute. By taking too long, you're preventing other people from speaking.
Councillors, part 2, equality of opportunity. For a long time now, things for disabled people have been really discriminatory and failed the public sector equality duty. And we need a fundamental change in BCC perspective and then its actions and working practices. I aspire to a Bristol City Council that makes Bristol a national model of excellence in the way disabled people are treated. Challenge outdated attitudes everywhere, including your workforce, and remove them, particularly in planning policies, to ensure there are no longer mere gestures to the PSED. Despite serious budget problems, you can spend differently and not necessarily more. Clearing up mistakes later is very expensive, especially allied to legal costs. I realise Bristol City Council lawyers can often probably weasel their way around PSED failings, but really, do we want to aim for that? I implore you, do better. Without the first essential for independent living, free and easy access to our city, you fail, the PSED. Without enough provision, we cannot attend things, but remember, we need to be close
Caroline,
enough,
you've had your
not
minute,
just
I'm afraid,
closer.
so thank you
Could
so
I-
much for coming
could
this
I
evening.
finish it?
But no, we need other people to have their say as well. Thank you very much. So let's move on to public statement 25, Muriel Wagner. Is Muriel here? Is Muriel here? Yep, thank you. Muriel, so you've got 1 minute on Eastern Leisure Centre. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor and councillors. 3 weeks ago, Eastern Leisure Centre told us that their sports hall will close, ending community basketball, netball, volleyball, cricket nets and indoor football. A soft play will replace a quarter of the hall. For 15 years, we have played netball in a group called St Paul's Rebels. We left St Paul's Leisure Centre when courts were removed, and then at Horfield Leisure Centre until that court was turned into a soft play. We have since had 8 successful years in Easton and have gone from strength to strength. 80 women of all ages, abilities, backgrounds are welcomed on a drop-in basis. We laugh from beginning to end, support each other, and it is a mainstay of many players' lives. It is particularly important as a suitable place where Muslim women have the security and the confidence to play. But we have not been considered. The consultation conducted during COVID shows 6 centre users replied, and the Equalities Impact Assessment says groups have not been reached. There was no mention of soft play or netball. We ask for the sports hall to continue to deliver sports to the community as per Everyone Active equality and diversity policy, and the soft play to be relocated. Thank you, Council.
Thank you. So now we need to move on to public questions. 18 questions were received from members of the public. 9 of those have indicated that they wish to attend. We'll try to cover as many questions as possible in the 15 minutes available. It may not be possible for everyone to speak, so we ask for your patience as we run through the questions in order. And please remember, everyone will get a written response if they have submitted a question. So firstly, can I ask, is Helen Hughes here? Thank you. And Helen, you've got a question on the East Bristol Liberal neighbour for Councillor Plowden. Councillor Plowden, if you'd like to answer the questions, please. And then, Helen, you have a chance for supplementaries.
Hello, Helen. Thanks for coming in, and thanks for your question. We're in the rather strange situation where I apparently summarise your question and then give you an answer. So I think your question, please confirm that funding for improving public transport infrastructure is therefore dependent on council first implementing livable neighbourhoods. Is that is basically saying you only get public transport if you do livable neighbourhoods. So funding for transport schemes comes from a variety of different sources. The funding for EBLN comes from the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement, and there are a range of options as to how to invest this funding. All schemes funded by CRSTS must comply with government-related transport policy, and the Local Transport Night 120, which deals with bike infrastructure, was part of that. This is reasonable and appropriate. Government sets national policy, and authorities like Bristol then deliver schemes in line with that policy environment based on a thorough assessment of local need. So government provides funding on the basis of a range of factors, including need and past performance. There's no specific link between public transport funding and livable neighbourhoods, and no requirement to deliver livable neighbourhoods to get public transport funding. Bristol is a city with limited space and no room for new roads, existing transport pressures, a growing population, and a need to decarbonise our transport network. The Transport Strategy for Bristol in 2019 noted that due to the projected growth in housing and jobs planned for Bristol, we need to reduce the percentage of people commuting by car from 53% in 2019 to 43% in 2036, just to maintain traffic at its current level. We also know that congestion costs our city region economy £300 million per year in 2013. So we believe that providing more sustainable options for people to travel around is therefore a necessity for the city, and livable neighbourhoods are a key part of our future plans to enable this while improving the neighbourhoods we all live in.
Helen, you can ask up to 2 supplementaries if you wish.
There are 2 more questions, which...
That was a very comprehensive answer, Councillor Plowden. Yes.
I'll try and
I think if you want to go on to all the questions, answer all the questions, and then Helen can ask her 2 supplementaries.
So the second one was, I think, more or less, is it more important to conform to the diktats of funders than to listen to people that we're here to serve? There are no requirements to deliver livable neighbourhoods with any of our funding pots. The Council has chosen to bring forward this scheme based on wider strategies and policies and sees livable neighbourhoods as an important intervention in transport terms, but also in public health and environmental terms. We carried out engagement and consultation processes as part of the scheme, and while there are people opposed to the proposals, there are also many in support. The Council must balance the views of residents with local and regional policy objectives while improving the city. And finally, my Lord Mayor, you ask, am I okay with this whole scheme being polarising? And actually, I'm very disappointed that this scheme has been so polarising, and this comment was made in context of a recognition and sadness at seeing how polarising the scheme is proving to be, with very many people in support of it as well as against it.
So, Helen, you've got 2 supplementaries.
That was a lot of words to take in all at once. Thank you, Mr. Plowden. My last question was actually, are you aware that you or the council's actions have been causing polarisation? So you misinterpreted that a little bit. It was very clear on my question. Are you aware that your policies cause polarisation? So rather than wringing your hands and feeling so sorry there's polarisation, can you please see that you are actually very instrumental in this polarisation? You've talked about people being pro and against the scheme, and I think that you do know that there are thousands of people who are criticising it, and there are, you keep bringing up the idea that there are all these people for it, but we're not really seeing them. So, yeah, my question really would then be, are you aware, that was what my question was, are you aware that you are causing this polarisation? I'm talking to you, Mr. I'm referring to the whole council.
Thanks, Helen. I think it is polarised, and I think there are a lot of people who write to us very much in favour of this scheme, and I think there are also people who are against it. Well, it's true. That's the truth. I've got one just today thanking me for seeing this through and being trying to get on with it. The inspiration I take is from Waltham Forest, where it was very divisive in 2013 or 14 when it was first put in. 3 years after it was put in, only 2.7% of people surveyed on a proper survey, you know, representative survey rather than just a petition or anything like that. Only 2.7% of people said they wanted it put back like it was before.
Are you aware, in that case, well, you mentioned, was it Waltham Forest? Are you aware of all the other schemes around the country where they have had to retract the schemes? For example, in Exeter, in Edinburgh, in Newcastle, there are many places around the country where these schemes have had to be taken out again. So just naming one scheme where very, very few people wanted it out again, it doesn't actually give a very good picture of what's going on everywhere in the country.
I'm aware from your the literature of, that I've been reading very carefully, that there's been about 20 low traffic neighbourhoods that have been taken out again. I think that compares with around about 150 to 200 that have been put in and stayed in. So I think, you know, we look at the balance there. I think it's also worth saying that some of them were put in very, very quickly with minimal consultation during COVID. I think there's a very high proportions of the ones that were put in under those circumstances that are amongst the minority that have been taken out.
Thank you. Is Anthony... no, you've had your 2 supplementaries. Yes, Councillor Clark.
Can I just say that we're on PQ 18, and normally we'd start at 1 and work through...
Yes, thank you, Councillor Clark. I know what I'm doing. That was a question that was missed out last time, so we put it first this time. Thank you very much.
The other thing is, can we, to save time, rather than the member having to say the question, can we just assume that members have read the question so we can move on to the responses to save some time?
Thank you very much. Let's move on. So, public question number 2, Anthony Martin. Is Anthony here? No, okay. Public question 3, Andrew Payton is here, I believe. Yes, so Andrew, you had questions on Bristol Zoo plan application for Councillor Parsons. Councillor Parsons, please.
Thank you very much for your questions. I'm going to, as quickly as possible, go through the answers that have been provided to me by officers. In answer to your first question, external legal support in defending the judicial review has been procured in line with the Council's approach for appointing barristers. This process ensures both good financial value and that the appointed barristers have the relevant knowledge, expertise and experience to deal with the litigation concerned. A fee is negotiated based on their knowledge and expertise. So the Council won't disclose a specific amount due to commercial confidentiality. On your second question, the short answer is no. So the Council does need to hold legal reserves to deal with legal challenges should they arrive, and the Council seeks to minimise legal expenditures for litigation by prioritising sound and robust decision making. On the issue around affordable housing, it's worth saying that planning permissions and their supporting Section 106 agreements provide a significant proportion of the pipeline of supply of affordable housing for the city, which includes social rent tenure. And on your third question, I'm informed that decisions about future litigation can only be taken once the specifics of the coming judgment have been assessed.
And you've got 2 supplementaries.
Well, I'm a little bit gobsmacked that you can't give it any indication of budgets for legal costs whatsoever through the sheer fact of confidentiality. We're not talking about you revealing rates, but surely we're entitled to have some sense of how much the council is spending on defending a major planning application that was frankly widely unpopular and clearly controversial. No, we can't. You can't do that. It's fine.
I'm not detecting a question there, but
you're absolutely cannot, as a council, give any indication of your budgeted expenditure for the defence of this planning application whatsoever?
I've been informed that on a specific case, then the answer to that is no.
Well, if there's a second question, I find it, to be honest, I'm so staggered by that as a lack of accountability that I don't really have any other questions.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. We'll move on in that case. So, Melissa Topping for Councillor Plowden. Councillor Plowden, if you'd like to answer Melissa's questions, and then Melissa has 2 supplementaries. Public question number 8.
Hello, Melissa. Thank you for your questions, and I really do appreciate how much this scheme is affecting you personally. And I'd just like to make it clear that sometimes when I'm smiling in full council, it's because I'm trying to create a welcoming atmosphere for people, because I think we learned under the previous administration that some people came in all the way to City Hall and didn't have a very welcoming situation. So I try not to smile, but that's one of the reasons. The details of the engagement can be found on www.askbristol.gov.uk/project-timeline. Details of potential measures were engaged on in stage 2, where local people propose measures on the map. In answer to question 2, Wessel are key stakeholders for projects in the city and have been notified throughout the project by email. We're currently commissioning this organisation to do accessibility audits throughout the area. It's not possible to provide personal information about a group of disabled residents without breaching their privacy. A group of residents who requested an opportunity to visit the locations of the proposals and talk through the details in the council agreed to work with them. I do agree that a group of residents should not have been described or implied as a constituted group if they were not, and we shouldn't have put capital letters. This happened on one particular document, but has not been repeated, and we've learned the lessons from that. And finally, the council is committed to the delivery of the EBLN trial.
Melissa.
So you're basically not answering those at all then, really, are you?
Melissa, can you talk into the microphone, please, so we can all hear? So what's your first supplementary?
Sorry, you haven't answered those fully at all. But Wessel were not consulted regarding the EBLN and have clearly stated this. And as for the Barton Hill Disabilities Group, you can't claim you consulted with a disabilities group and then all of a sudden say, oh, they weren't a group, they were just some residents. And
Melissa, you need to ask a question, please, your supplementary question, because we're running out of time.
Supplementary question is, cyclists, walkers and drivers currently use these streets with 5 years of 0 accidents, as shown by BCC data, until last week when a child was hit by a cyclist in Beaufort Road. Does this not show you have created a problem? This incident would probably not have occurred if the road was open and pavements weren't blocked all down one side, with simple traffic calming, for example, filter flow lights, pedestrian crossing, evenly spaced speed humps and yellow lines down the cemetery side. This street can be fixed without closing. So, in all honesty, with the severity of issues faced by many with the closures, what will be a severe negative impact that will be felt by a single one of those in support of the scheme if it does not continue?
What was the question, the actual question at the end?
In all honesty, with the severity of issues faced by many with the closures, what will be a severe negative impact felt by one single person in support of the scheme if it doesn't continue?
The scheme is there to improve public health, to encourage people to become more active, and to try and make a better environment. And that's why we're doing it. It is a trial. We will share the data at the end of the 6 months, and we can all then collaborate to see what the data's telling us.
Why can't we collaborate before? Why continue to push a scheme in that is already proving to have severe negative impact on so many people?
Well, as we've explained a lot of times, there's people are benefiting from it. There's benefits and disbenefits in the round, and in the balance, we've adjudged the benefits to be much greater than the disbenefits. This scheme has according to the Department for Transport Methods, has a return on investment of £11 for every pound put in, which is one of the best buys in public health you will ever see.
Thank you very much. David Redgewell, please. Questions for, Ed, Councillor Plowden again. So that's public question number 9 from David Redgewell on bus services.
Thank you for your questions, Dave. Bless you. The Supported Services Task and Finish Group established to oversee the funding of bus services has resumed to deliver the next phase of work with a review to new or enhanced bus services being operative from September 2025. The provision of services to support the nighttime economy is already part of consideration of the funding alongside other priorities. In terms of your second question, we continue to work closely with Clear Channel to maintain and clean our bus shelters and bus stop infrastructure. We have a strong contract in place with service level agreements to remove graffiti when it occurs. Currently, the SLA requires a 1 working day response to graffiti with an enhanced 4-hour response time for any offensive graffiti. In practice, the response times are much quicker than this. These responses are in effect 24/7. We also have an on-site inspector resources which respond to graffiti damage and other issues. There are no active proposals to transfer bus, coach and other public transport infrastructure such as shelters from Bristol City Council to the Combined Authority. And in answer to the third question, the management of the Westlink contract is undertaken by WECA. They monitor the performance of their contractors providing the service and the service overall and report headline performance to BCC. We are working with WECA to improve the dashboards available to the constituent authorities.
David, you've got 2 supplementaries.
Yeah, so my first one really is, will Councillor Plowden and Tim Rippington work with South Gloucestershire to look at and WECA to look at the problems we've got in East Bristol, where we've lost evening and daytime services across the city boundaries?
Yeah, it's part of our sort of make-up and part of the Combined Authorities make-up to work well with WECA, and we'll work as necessary and if necessary with Gloucestershire as well.
Thank you. So my second question is about the bus infrastructure. Whilst I understand the service level agreement, I'm still aware of a number of damaged shelters and a number of damaged facilities. And I wonder if Councillor Plowden could push Clear Channel in other parts of the southwest that are also very difficult sometimes to make sure the repairs and one of the main stops in Bond Street's been out of action on the 8 route for got to be nearly 2 months now and still no repairs and damage. So I wonder if we can push Clear Channel to respond harder. I think that's the issue.
Dave, I think you've emailed me quite a number of occasions when you don't feel that we've been up to the scratch in getting on top of the repairs, and I hope you'll continue to do so that we can act on that intelligence.
Thank you. Just to remind all members of the public that you will all get written responses to your questions, but that is the end of public forum now. Members of the public, the adjournment for today's meeting is expected at 7:30, so if you'd like to stay and remain and listen to some of the petition debates coming up, you're very welcome to. Otherwise, if I could ask you to leave as quickly as possible and as quietly as possible so we can get on with the rest of tonight's proceedings. Thank you. So now we move on to agenda item 7, petitions notified by councillors. Oh, sorry, members, just before I move on to agenda item 7, just to let you know that Councillor Tony Dyer has been called away on urgent business and so won't be returning to this meeting. Thank you. So if I could ask Councillor Horncham, please, who has a petition to improve road safety in Broomhill Infant School, to present your petition, and you've got 1 minute.
Thank you, Lord Mayor and members. I bring this petition and the letters from the children of Broomhill Infants to you. Hold on, can you hear me? I have repeated, so I'll start again. I bring this petition to the letters and the children from Broomhill Infants to you on the safety of their walk to school, there were 307 signatories. I have repeatedly asked about what we can do to make the walk to school safer around the school's gates. Only 55% of primary age children walk to school in Bristol. We all know the obvious benefits of walking: greater health outcomes, less pollution, less greenhouse gases. But what is not discussed is better relationships children have when they're walking with their parents or carers, and indeed as they get older, the independence and friendships they form when they walk on their own. But can you blame parents for not doing this when there is a minority of drivers who drive unsafely, park illegally, or with no disregard for others? The petition asks for a modest improvement to the roads and increased enforcement. We could save a child from injury and also reinforce the next generation that they will be listened to. Please enjoy the letters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hornshaw. So now we move to agenda item 8 and our first petition debate, Save Bristol's Museums. And this report is for noting. First, I'd like to call on Councillor Mark Weston to present the report as the petition organiser. Councillor Weston, you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. A skip in my heart, my Lord Mayor. No longer consigned to 3 minutes. You get to enjoy me for 5. Oh, what could start the night better? I'm sure you're just salivating at the thought that Tom gets this in a few minutes' time when he does his petition too. First of all, can I thank colleagues, Lord Mayor and the petitioners for signing this. That is a particularly important subject close to my heart. And essentially, we're here to talk about Bristol's 3 museums, the Red Lodge, Georgian House, and Blaise Museum itself in the Blaise Estate. The landscape has shifted slightly since the petition was started. When the petition began, the council was very much exploring and consulting on closing all 3. Since then, there's been a slight stay of execution. They've been given another year, but the funding then runs out. So we have essentially 13 months, and then the museums close. And what petitioners and I want to do, basically, is not close them. We regard them as important. I mean, I'm sure if anyone, I'm going to obviously consign most of my comments to Blaise, because I'm the councillor for Henbury and Brentry, and in my opinion, and it's totally unbiased, Blaise is the most beautiful part of the city. Now, some of you may disagree, you may have your own favourite areas, but I think we can all agree you're wrong. So, when I think about Blaise, if you haven't been to the Blaise Estate, if you haven't, where have you been? But if you have, you will know what a majestic place it is, with the hills, the gorge, the play area, our fine public toilets, which are still open, the cafe, but sitting right at the heart of it is the Blaise House. It's the Blaise Museum. It is a key part of the community's heritage and our history. And it's a fabulous building, sitting majestically in the old estate. In fact, it very much feels sort of like one of those National Trust estates that you sometimes might go to. But the better part is it's free for everyone to access it. You can roam it, so you really should. And when we hear about the mothballing of these museums, and we think actually it's ripping the heart out of our local history, out of our estate. And when we look to the future of it, we think that closing our museums is so short-sighted. Because actually these 3 buildings are all listed. We will have the legal obligation to maintain them, and yet we will have closed the buildings and removed any chance of raising revenue. It is an incredibly daft idea. Now, since you've been discussing, or since it was proposed to close them, I've been contacted by various organisations, from things like those that organise weddings to paranormal tourism. It sounded interesting to me. But what we're really bad at is trying to, I think, commercialise and sort of sweat our assets and increase our revenues from these fabulous facilities. We can and we should do more. We have 13 months to try and do that. What's particularly galling for me as well is in 2019, before anyone decided to eat an undercooked bat and everything changed, we were actually looking at investing in Blaise, about improving it. Blaise used to get 44,000 visitors a year. That figure is now about 24,000. COVID changed that. Probably parking charges changed it too, but it's certainly got a huge number of visitors. They can come back again, and they can raise money from those visitors when they come, but we're going to need to do a bit of legwork to it. The plan, you see, was to originally make Blaise the true heart of the estate, to put its history in context, where the estate came from, the family that ran it, what was around it, the Blaze Hamlet and everything else. And we sort of walked away from that and we forgot it. And we forgot that when it came to the Red Lodge and the Georgian House as well. There were such fabulous opportunities that were in the pipeline that were then stopped. And I think we need to reconnect to those. So from our point of view as signatures to the petition, please take closure off the table. By all means, let's look at other ways to do things. Let's see how we can raise additional revenue to support it. But our history is important to us. To sort of mothball these, to let it fade, to let them fade into memory and distant mists of time, it's short-sighted at best. We would still need to maintain them. And yet we'd have less and less income to do so. They would sit there and just rot. So, the petition today, please, colleagues, keep our museums open, keep them open for future generations, and of course, do visit Blaze the Beautiful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now Councillor Annie Stafford-Townsend to speak on behalf of the Green Group. And Annie, you've only got 3 minutes, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. So when I was growing up in poverty in North Bristol, I loved the museums, and Blaze was definitely one of my favourites. And I used to go there every half term to all the museums, including the historic houses. And these trips were responsible for my love of history and my subsequent career in the culture sector. And access to the arts and culture is to our history is vital for all of us, young and old, and it nourishes us and it sustains us. And we know that learning from our history has never been more important than right now. Because in the 1980s and in the 90s, with a Conservative government, we had to pay to visit the museums. And when I was a child, the culture sector across the country was underfunded and access to it was restricted for those without privilege, resulting in a visitor drop-off in Bristol of 90%. That was a cultural vandalism that has been repeated over the term of the last Conservative government. Of course, the vandalism to our city hasn't been limited to the cultural sector. As a whole, the city has suffered a loss of £172.5 million a year, which is nearly £520 per person, which is actually a cut of 35% since the Conservatives came to power in 2010. This means that the Cultural Department has seen a loss of £260,000 from its budget this year alone, which is almost twice the considered saving that was consulted upon. It's this increasingly tight financial context that our museum service is currently operating in. With a context of a £52 million deficit, the savings are not insignificant actually, and so it's very correct to consult the city on what it values, which is what we've done. The houses and the contents themselves are never at risk within the proposal, and I'm really glad that the city, the signatories of this petition, they agree with myself and the Green Party over here that we want to protect and we need to protect and value our heritage assets. That's why this administration has set up a cross-party culture committee to ensure that the sector is given the prominence that it deserves and it requires. And I do note that the Conservative member has yet to attend it, unfortunately. Bristol museums they're respected nationally and they lead the way in terms of exhibitions, programmes and quality of offer, and they're one of the main attractors for visitors to the city. And this is in spite of very little investment into them from either of the main opposition parties to this point. We're carrying out a governance review of the historic houses, and we're spending the next 6 to 9 months considering every possible option for the museums. Civic museums across the country are in crisis as a result of government policy and chronic underinvestment, which is why the Secretary of State for Culture has announced a Civic Museums Recovery Fund, and Bristol will be applying for support from this fund. And I'd like to end my comments, Lord Mayor, by thanking the very excellent museum team and the arts and culture team as a whole, who are doing a brilliant job in spite of very, very challenging circumstances. They have a strong commercial awareness and excellent leadership, and they're doing everything that they can to make sure our cultural sector really thrives.
Thank you very much. And now Councillor Fabian Brick will speak on behalf of the Labour Group.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I must admit, I do find it ironic that the Conservatives launched a petition to oppose cuts to council services. But in this case, they do have a point. The proposed savings would have been tiny, and we still have to maintain the premises because, as Mark has already said, they're all listed. And Blaze, Red Lodge and the Georgian House really do play a pivotal role in our cultural offer. They're part of this city's story. Soon after I was elected, back in 2007, I was on a cross-party group reviewing how to improve our museums. We visited the main ones in Newcastle and Glasgow to get some ideas. For example, in Glasgow, the main museum and art gallery storage had been moved off-site and the space was freed up for more exhibition space and a much better cafe bar than we have in ours. That kind of potential is there in our main museum and art gallery, but sadly austerity put paid to doing anything with the findings that we had. But back to these smaller museums. They matter, and we need to secure a long-term future for them. There are so many ways we could make them more viable, which we could explore, to say nothing of being open to ideas from the wider community. How about organising events in them, or letting other groups and organisations rent the premises, rent these museums for theirs? The conference room next door and the museum and art gallery are regularly used as fantastic event venues, so why not investigate what's possible with these three museums? Closing museums to save such a tiny amount of money is sadly emblematic of the short-term thinking that lands many councils in financial trouble. These historic houses could easily fund themselves and even produce a profit. Much as I prefer museums to be free, having a small admission charge would be better than closure, surely. Failing that, if the administration really cannot afford to run them long term, what about having them run by or in partnership with either English Heritage or the National Trust? Again, better than closure. But we need to think outside the box a bit. Closing these museums next year will be an easy decision, as in it's easy to implement. But we need the council administration to put in the legwork to come up with a solution that will benefit, not harm, our city's cultural heritage in the long run. Blaze, Red Lodge and the Georgian House are assets we should be proud of. Let's use this next year to explore how we can secure their future long term, rather than to leave them to rot for a pitiful budget saving. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Stephen Williams on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. About a month ago, on a Saturday morning, you were at City Museum and Art Gallery, greeting the lion dancers, and in the afternoon, I was doing the same. And it was fabulous to see so many people enjoying our art gallery and museum at the top of Park Street. People perhaps have not been in the museum before, and we need to do more of this, events to draw more people into that museum. A couple of weeks later, I was at MShed for LGBT History Month. There were some excellent and well-attended talks in the afternoon. And again, MShed was absolutely packed with people. So both our flagship museums are a great success story. But if we're honest, our smaller museums, Georgian House, Red Lodge and Blaze that Marcus referred to, have not enjoyed the same success. And that is something we ought to face up to as a council and think about how can we make them more successful. We've removed the threat of closure off the table. We have a culture working group that Annie is chairing, looking at those houses. But we really must do better. Equivalent houses to the Georgian House in Edinburgh and Bath, just down the road, have visitors in the tens of thousands. Our Georgian House and Red Lodge have visitors around about 10,000. We really must do better on the marketing of them and the signposting of them, and we really need up-to-date guidebooks as well. I brought on a prop, Lord Mayor. This is my guidebook to the Red Lodge, bought in my first year as an undergraduate student at this university studying history in 1986. There hasn't been a new one since, and this has been out of print for a long time. The one for Georgian House has been out of print even longer. We really need to do better than that for our museums and smaller houses that really are interesting, have interesting stories about the residents that were in them. And it is a shame, because a lot of good work in particular has been done on Georgian House, linking the story of the Pinney family and where they got their fortune from, which was on the backs of enslaved Africans. A lot of good work has been done interpreting that story, researching it, but people can't buy anything to read about it. We need to do better than that. Fabian mentioned the working group that he was on in 2007. I can trump that. I was on one in 1997 when we looked at exactly the same issues that we're looking at now, and here we are again. So I really hope this new working group can make progress. maybe having entrance fees, definitely working with the Bristol Film Office and other people. We know Bristol, we see it every week, don't we? Not just in this building, but we can see on our screen on dramas that Bristol is attractive to filmmakers. Georgian House, Red Lodge and Blaze could make much more from them. But just as Fabian just said, I actually think possibly the future for these buildings is partnership with English Heritage and National Trust, and I do hope that is something we seriously look at.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Michelat, to speak on behalf of the Conservative Group.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. When this petition was launched, I wasn't surprised how quickly it reached the required numbers to be debated in this chamber. Bristol has a rich and diverse history, and these venues help educate and tell the story of Bristol's past. The proposed closure of these museums would be a huge loss to the city. Why close the doors to the past when you can keep them open for future generations to enjoy? Why would you close the Red Lodge, which features the Great Oak Room, described as one of the finest rooms in the West Country, with its Tudor and Elizabethan panelling? Why would you close Blaze Museum, which features the Grand Picture Room, where works by renowned 19th century Bristolian artists such as James Baker Pine and William James Muller hang for all to enjoy and admire? Why would you close the Georgian House, which transports its visitors back to the reigns of King George III, telling the story of both upstairs and downstairs? Although any decision has been postponed for another year, this creates more uncertainty, and I plead the Council not to close these venues in the future. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I see your auctioneer expertise coming to the fore there. So thank you very much, everyone. The petition will now be referred to the leader or relevant policy committee chair for formal response. And that concludes agenda item 8. So we now move on to agenda item 9, our second petition debate, Say No to Monthly Bin Collections in Bristol. And I'd like to call upon Councillor Tom Bernard to present the report as the petition organiser. 5 minutes, please, Tom.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Bin Day. I want to thank every one of the 12,000 plus people who have signed the petition and spoke out on this issue. This is a huge number of people, unrivalled in recent years. It sends a strong and unequivocal message. Bristolians don't want 4 weekly black bin collections. Now, the strength of feeling behind this is no surprise. This is the one council service that everyone uses. It is the one service that everyone expects to function as council taxpayers. Residents are fed up, and every councillor here will have had residents who are angry about missed bin collections or recycling that hasn't been collected, and they have every right to be angry. When council tax goes up, yet the one service they use isn't working, that's problematic. And by the way, you'll see this petition also states the council was consulting on a 15% council tax rise before Christmas, because it was published in November. Now, good job Labour have ruled that one out for you in case you decide to go ahead with that. Now, on top of this, the Greens decided to consult on halving the number of black bin collections, and it would have led to more problems. Now, I wanted to just share a few of the residents and what they said when they signed the petition. This will be a disaster of health concern for a lot of Bristol residents. Bristol already has a huge issue with rubbish and fly tipping. Having seen what's left in the streets on a regular weekly basis, I cannot imagine how bad it would be if it was changed to 4 weekly. We don't live in an ideal world, and this plan will just increase rubbish on the streets, fly tipping and rats. It's clear this isn't workable. As many in the chamber will be aware, I recently became a dad again to a second beautiful baby girl. It is a wonderful feeling, and it is a reminder of the city I want my daughters to grow up in. It is also a reminder of the number of nappies that you get through with a newborn baby. Now, I tried to sign up to the nappy recycling trial. I was disappointed I was not accepted onto it. This trial is not citywide nor is it permanent, and I would like us to see us go further and faster on this. On a few occasions, many have also looked to order food replacement waste bins, and if any of you have tried to do that recently, not possible. It's Bristol Waste are out of stock. If we want less food going in people's back bins, let's start by getting the basics right, ensuring that food recycling is even an option for people in the city. People with larger families are filling up their bins on the current schedules, never mind what would happen on a reduced frequency. To be clear, we need to recycle more. Bristol is the best core city at recycling. There's no reason why we can't better ourselves and go further. This financial year, Bristol City Council is set to receive over £7.4 million from the Extended Producer Responsibility Allowance, a polluter pays approach to packaging recycling. Recycling raises revenue while incinerating waste costs us. Injecting that money into the service to allow for soft plastic recycling and other measures will save us money in the long term and recycle more, without moving to 3 or 4 weekly black bin collections. This is what needs to happen. Now, I'm expecting the Greens to disavow their old friend Petitions, as they have done before, and say they should instead only be raised through their task and finish group. Over 12,000 people have signed this, as a reminder. It deserves the attention of every councillor, rather than just 9 of them. The public clearly want clarity, and for 4 weekly bin collections to be ruled out immediately and clearly, not just at this time. The task and finish group meetings will be held behind closed doors, and that's not what the public wants or the committee system that was promised. Following my calls, the committee model review group is now meeting in public. Waste recycling services are used by all council taxpayers, and it is right that Bristol citizens have the opportunity to hear those deliberations on what the service may look like in the future. We need an open debate on this, and for the public's views to be put front and centre. At the very least, the Greens need to commit to holding these meetings in public, and I invite the Green Party today to make that commitment. I'm also expecting a bit of arguing over semantics. The petition says monthly rather than 4 weekly. 4 weekly, monthly, tomato, tomato. It is still not frequent enough, and it's been roundly rejected by Bristolians. And what I'm more interested in is the proposals and decisions that this Green-led administration takes, as opposed to what they say. It looks like a decision's already been made, and the consultation predetermined. The Greens now rowing back on 4 weekly collection, which is welcomed, finally. But as a reminder, the Green Party and Liberal Democrat votes have passed a budget already that has a 1 million annual saving to non-recyclable waste collections, i.e. less frequent black bin collection. Now, they've even told the press this is modelled on moving to 3 weekly black bin collections. If I had to hazard a guess, I reckon the Greens probably put 4 weekly black bin collections in the consultation so that when they move to 3 weekly, seems like they've compromised. So they may say they've listened to the public and won't move to 4 weekly, but was this the plan from the start? To conclude, listen to Bristolians, improve recycling rates through incentives, not punishments, and let's keep black bin collections fortnightly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and now Councillor James Crawford, who I believe is about to make his maiden speech. Is that correct, James?
I am indeed.
Good luck.
Be nice, everyone.
3 minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Don't
very
applaud
much.
Jed, he hasn't done it. Okay.
Oh. Well, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. It was very nice to hear those comments from the petition. I did notice you didn't mention Mickey Mouse's comment, which commented that you were out-reforming reform. But, you know, that's by the by. I'd also like to very much thank the over 15,000 people who filled out the waste consultation itself. We welcome this petition, unlike what you'd expect. Petitions are a vital part of our democracy. We do need to correct the record, however.
Excuse me. Public forum is now over. Please be quiet. There is no public participation in this debate. Please be quiet so we can continue. James, sorry about the interruption to your maiden speech.
Running the gauntlet now.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to get a right reply.
Please continue, James, sorry.
Who shall I name? And then they can come back. Anyway. Cheers, Caroline. It's one of my residents. This is turning out to be a very long speech. Sorry, everyone.
Actually, the clock hasn't started yet, Oliver.
Right, so I will admit, off my game, so I will confess that the reliability of collections could be better. We will acknowledge that. Of course, we'll also acknowledge that this did begin under Labour in 2023 when you cut hundreds of thousands of pounds from the service budget. You drove the service into the ground so hard, we're still picking up the pieces over a year later. Now, it's this context which has driven the need to consider the future of our waste strategy. You haven't really shown any interest in promoting the consultation, You've done a lot of leafleting, I have noticed, a lot of waste paper. Yeah, I know, you're grinning. 50,000 leaflets, I heard. Yeah, indeed. But for all your claims of being a constructive opposition, you've shown no interest in signposting the way that people can actually feed in ideas and preferences to improve council services. Now, God, I'm getting tired stood up this long. Let's keep the applause for a moment, but I appreciate it. Now, to be clear, a good consultation works to gather views on a topic by giving a wide range of options. This includes outliers, right? This naturally means some options are taken forward whilst others are not, based on public opinion. The full findings of this consultation, as you've already said, will be analysed in full at the Waste Task and Finish Group before being agreed at committee, which you have Labour members on. You need to stop claiming that decisions have been made already. It is not true. Now look, we get it, I get it. It's how Labour operated in power. The backroom deal, the stitch-up, the sham consultation. You know, just a few weeks ago, you claimed, and I quote, the council only ever consults the public on something it intends to do. That was your group leader, Councillor Renner. Maybe when you were in charge, all right? But with that attitude, it's no wonder that Bristol rejected you last May. To be clear, we Greens do things differently. Whilst the Waste Task and Finish Group will consider all proposals in greater detail, Bristol has spoken, and we have listened. We do not support a 4 weekly black bin collection at this time. I look forward to considering this petition, alongside the consultation, in future Environment Committee meetings, where all the pros and cons of how we develop services for the future can be discussed in greater detail after the Task and Finish Group, which will be cross-party, explores the findings and the evidence available. Thank you very much.
And now Councillor Ellie King for the Labour Group, please. Ellie.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. 12,000 signatures is a significant vote by any measure, and I'm pleased to see the strength of feeling on this issue has finally been recognised by the Greens. Labour members on the Environment and Sustainability Committee opposed this from the start. We made it clear to officers, the Chair and members that we did not think that this was reasonable or workable intervention into what is already a struggling service. We were ignored. We live in an urban environment with a lot of flats, with communal bins, with transient communities such as students and with growing families. This inevitably comes with its challenges, but bringing in a consultation that included the option of monthly collections was never going to be the solution, and it should never have been issued. I've also heard several times from the party opposite about recycling stagnating or declining. On this, I've got a couple of things to say. It's stagnating under your watch. The percentage of household waste sent for reuse, recycling and composting is worse than our target, and total waste is 15% higher than target for the first time. Under Labour, we had successful campaigns such as Slim My Waste, which diverted food from black bins, engaging communities and children in a meaningful way, with school assemblies, workshops, going out into communities, leafleting and engaging with customers in supermarkets. Under the Greens, we're yet to see the vision for how these waste dilemmas can be turned around in a way that is similarly constructive and takes communities with you. Secondly, disparaging talks of stagnating recycling rates completely ignores the impact that COVID and the cost of living crisis has had in our city and the changes it has made to the way we buy. A trend paralleled in almost all other local authorities, demonstrating that this is bigger than just Bristol and that we need a sympathetic and understanding approach to improving waste collection that takes into account the diverse and complex nature of our city that, quite frankly, has been through a lot in recent years. The Labour government are also in the process of implementing a raft of significant measures that will impact and improve waste management and reduce emissions. Extended producer responsibility, the emissions trading scheme and the circular economy task force will all put the responsibility firmly at the door of producers to design products and packaging that is more sustainable or reusable and prevent excessive waste. The deposit return scheme and the simpler recycling scheme will also incentivise easier recycling, less head scratching about what goes where, and help us transition from thinking of single-use drink cups as the norm. These are common sense changes that align to our environmental and emissions target ambitions. They will help us reduce our waste and improve our recycling. There is more we can do locally. We have continually called for the rollout of nappy recycling. Many of us on the Labour benches are parents and have gone through the nappy years. It is welcome to have had the pilot funded by Pura, but this will only reach at best 400 households in only 7 postcodes across the city. We want to see how this can be rolled out across the whole of Bristol so that all families can benefit. Food needs to have its own focus, ideally with an officer within the Environment and Sustainability team wholly dedicated to food sustainability, to work with other directorates on how to prevent food waste in the first place, supporting communities to get the most out of their food and waste less, and look into the feasibility of initiatives such as community composting. There's lots to be done, and I do hope that as we transition to a lower carbon waste system, that it will be inclusive and just, and that we will have our most disadvantaged communities at its heart.
Thank you very much. And now Councillor Joss Clark on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Firstly, I would like to congratulate the Labour Party for their politicking and going out of their way to scaremonger. To be honest, I'm surprised that this petition has got through to today's meeting, because from the outset is incorrect, as you refer to monthly collections, and to my knowledge this has never been proposed, an entirely fictitious notion made up by the Labour group. I do not wish to state the bleeding obvious, but monthly and 4 weekly are not the same. I knew, you knew I was going to say this, Tom, so do not be surprised, because we've already been there today on this one. But it's true, it is true. It's the difference between 12 and 13, I know, but it still counts. The Lib Dem group were opposed to the consultation initially going out for the following 2 reasons. Firstly, it was sprung upon the committee without any proper discussion or input, undermining the committee system. Secondly, residents have been experiencing a great deal of frustration over the past month with missed collections and overall a very poor service from Bristol Waste. The timing of the consultation, which only closed yesterday, was really poor. When people were dissatisfied with the existing service, then to ask them about changing something that is already broken is frankly insulting. Now the consultation has closed, it would be wrong to preempt the results. But I do hope that the Labour group, as well as peddling their petition, also encouraged people to fill in the consultation, and I sincerely hope that you did that in conjunction with your petition. I do think that it's a bit rich that the Labour are laying this mess at the Greens' door when the decision to reorder the rounds to make things more efficient was done under your watch. But trying to undermine this consultation doesn't come as a great surprise, because under your administration you had a reputation for consulting on pre-made decisions, as you admitted yourselves. Finally, I would like to call on the Greens to reflect on the timing and circumstances in which this consultation came out. I really do think that that's worth reflecting on, and ask that the results are properly analysed before drawing any conclusions. Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Richard Eddy for the Conservative Group.
There are many members sitting in this chamber who are non-native Bristolians, people who have came here for education, work, or many other reasons. Everyone that can make a contribution to this city, and that's welcome indeed. Lord Mayor, for your own part, I seem to recall you publicly stated you came to Bristol primarily to escape from Weston. Can I respectfully suggest, if you consider continuing your political career elsewhere, you don't stand in Weston? As actually a native Bristolian, frankly, I feel increasingly ashamed by the filth, by the littering and the fly tipping in this city. So naturally, Both myself and my group fully support this petition. Not only are we in favour of 4 weekly collections, we're in favour of 3 weekly collections. We believe it's absolutely essential. But I do agree with James and Joss that it is utterly galling to hear these cries, these crocodile tears come from Tom Reynard and the Labour group. It was they, Tom, Kai and Ellie, were in Marvin Rees's cabinet, which only 2 years ago substantially raided Bristol Waste budget. Yeah. And that, frankly, I'm no apologist for the Green Group, but there are a few actual administrations I can recognise who've been handed more of a poison chalice than this one by Labour. So it is galling to hear Labour. Moreover, nationally, let us remember last autumn in Rachel Reeves' first budget, she actually hiked up employees' NI contributions. The impact on Bristol Waste is their wages bill explodes by 800k every year. So it's making it even more difficult. So what I certainly, and my group certainly, do wish the administration can look to maintain the current system of and regularity of bin collections. It is galling for those people over there to shed crocodile tears. It is as insulting as their amendments last month in the budget.
Thank you very much. The petition will now be referred to the leader or relevant policy committee chair for formal response, and that concludes agenda item 9. Now we move on to agenda item 10, audit committee half-year report. This item is for noting. I'd like to call on Councillor Rob Logan to move the report as chair of the audit committee. Councillor Logan.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Thank you to Councillor Weston and Councillor Reynard for the warm-up act, but it is now the main event of the evening, the half-year report of the audit committee, which I know everyone has been looking forward to. And I can honestly say that the first 6 to 9 months of this year's audit committee have been a resounding triumph. And I can say that honestly because I wasn't responsible for it. I'm very grateful to Councillor Rippington and Councillor Coombs for chairing those committees so admirably, and I'm sorry it's all gone downhill since. But I want to take the opportunity just to thank four groups of people who've been involved in getting us to where we are at the moment. The first is the internal audit team, a small group who do a critical job in the internal control environment. And one of the good things about the report is you've seen some impact of that. A particularly exciting impact for me is there's been a remarkable improvement in the performance with compliance with the procurement regulations, which I know everyone here is particularly excited about just as much as I am, and also has led to an identification of a need for improvement in contract management, which is also useful. Second, I would like to thank the members of the committee. It is a genuinely cross-party and non-party committee which really does some extraordinary work and has laid attention to lots of interesting cases that would not have given that attention without members' tenacity. So thank you for members for doing that so well. I'd particularly like to thank independent members. We are lucky enough to have 2 independent members, Simon and Adebola. Both of them are coming to the end of their term, so I would like to publicly thank Adebola Adebayo and Simon Cookson for their sterling work over the last, I believe, 7 years. And if there's anyone watching the live stream, you may be exactly who we need. So if so, please apply to the Section 151 officer. But finally, I would like to thank the public, because we are even more lucky to have a small but very determined group of people who are committed not only to attending the audit committee, to participating in it through public forum, but even to recording it, which the council seems strangely unable to do. So they remind us that the audit committee exists for the whole city, which I hope we do as well as we can within the group of people that we are. And I urge the full council to loudly and resoundingly note the half-year report of the audit committee.
Thank you. And now Councillor Wilcox for the Green Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I rise to give the Green Group's perspective on the last 6 months of the Audit Committee's meetings and actions. This is an audit that reviews the financial performance of the administration led by Labour up to May 2024. I'd like to thank officers, especially Simba's team, for organising and facilitating the meetings, as well as Grant Thornton for providing valuable insights and reports. I also want to acknowledge the members for their contributions to a productive debate. One significant issue that arose during the previous Labour administration was procurement breaches. At its peak in 22-23, the Council had to spend an additional £73 million on 341 contracts. Now, that figure has decreased to 10 million across 41 contracts. This remarkable improvement will enable this administration to execute the budget much more effectively. The procurement team deserves recognition for its efforts in achieving this. We have also been looking at the Stepping Up project as part of a Grant Thornton report and many public forum questions. We remain assured that members know their responsibilities in declaring an interest and will work with democratic services to encourage members to make declarations early and often. We have also noticed that the Ebenezer barge issue and will be receiving a briefing on that matter next week. We received internal audit reports of limited assurance in the following areas: children in unregistered provisions, education other than at schools, records management, savings delivery, business continuity planning, housing investment programme and maintenance, community infrastructure levy and Section 106 funding, and licensing income. We also received a very unusual and concerning no assurance report on interest and account management, detailing how the Council handles petty cash transactions. This is the lowest possible level of report that the committee can receive. We have already received one report about changes to these procedures and will be monitoring this very closely. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. And now Councillor Nicholas Coombs on behalf of the Liberal Democrat Group.
Thank you. So the functions of the Audit Committee, as I'm sure we know, are to assure the accounts, governance and value for money. As Vice Chair of Audit, I don't think that this report represents value for money. Now, that's no reflection on the work of our audit staff or the drafters, just the very existence of the report itself. So the half-annual report will cover much the same content as the full annual report, which we will be getting in a couple of months' time. National Accounting Guidance recommends one annual report, not two. Now, if our authority were led by a paranoid tyrant, then perhaps the Audit Committee would need a second opinion, second opportunity to cry for help. But that's not the case in Bristol. I didn't say that.
Tony's not here, how rude.
Reluctantly, I fear that the officers who drafted this report were probably wasting their time. Reviewing it was a waste of my time. Reading the report is a waste of your time, but you've already read it, so that is too late. And debating this report is a waste of time for everyone who is trapped in this meeting with us. And this matters in three ways. So the cost of the person hours spent on unnecessary paperwork will be tens of thousands of pounds, which could have been used to fund any of the things that we had to cut in the budget a few weeks ago. The focus of elected members should be not on routine reports, that distracts us from spending our time identifying and solving the real challenges facing the city. And most importantly, we need to set an example to our officers and the public that we are willing to challenge how we do things in order to cut waste and focus on what matters. At our last council meeting, we approved a cuts budget, which was uncomfortable for most of us. I've been doing this for 9 years. They are all cuts budgets. We need to be looking for ways for doing things better. So why didn't I stop this report from ever leaving the Audit Committee? I did try, but I was told it was a requirement of the terms of reference and the committee didn't have the ability to change it. That turns out to be not the case. So I'll try again to remove the half-year report from next year's works plan. Now, I mention this as an example to the other new councillors, like myself. We form a third of this chamber. And when you start a new job, you're most conscious of that gap between your expectations and the reality. And we need to hold on to this concept of how things could be and challenge when things that we see just don't make sense. So by this time next year, I want us to have cut the unnecessary meetings and the paperwork so that we don't have to cut the public services that we were elected to manage.
Thank you very much. And now Councillor Jonathan Hucker for the Conservative Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. That's an interesting take on things, Councillor Coons. The committee has considered a significant amount of detailed technical information in the period covered by the report, and I'd like to thank my colleagues across all parties on the committee for their diligence and the officers for their support. I would also like to thank the chairman of the committee for the first half of the year, Councillor Rippington, and my support goes to the new chairman, Councillor Logan. The committee approved the annual statement of accounts for 2023-24 in November, following an unqualified opinion from the external auditors. I have previously stated my concerns about delays in the completion of the Council's annual statement of accounts. Performance has improved to the extent that it is now satisfactory. However, it is still below a level that would be considered acceptable in the private sector. The committee has been closely monitoring procurement breaches, as Councillor Wilcox mentioned, and we are pleased to see that there has been a considerable improvement in this area. Counter-fraud work continues to generate significant savings for the Council. I do have serious concerns over the continuing deficit on the DSG. I hope the Government will extend the statutory override beyond March 2026, because if not, I think there is a real risk that this Council could find itself in Section 114 territory. It is imperative that the Council should successfully address the failings identified by the social housing regulator. This is very disappointing that the Chief Internal Auditor has only been able to provide an opinion of limited assurance on the operation of the Council's systems of internal control, governance and risk management for 2023-24. This deterioration from the position of reasonable assurance that existed previously is based on an increased number of limited or even no assurance opinions for individual audits. This is something that the committee takes extremely seriously. The committee received the much-delayed Colston Hall Lessons Learned report produced by Arcadis in July. The report found there was a risk that the project was doomed to be a financial catastrophe from the outset because no one was really in charge until it was too late. The report also stated that the Council should have carried out more detailed investigations of the building before putting so much taxpayers' money at risk. However, no one has been held accountable for this, regardless of the fact that mistakes were made under a previous administration.
Councillor Hucker, you're going over your allotted 3 minutes. Do you want to just quickly come to your final sentence, please?
I will, thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm actually on my final sentence. Regardless of the fact that the mistakes were made under a previous administration, I think this Council should do the honourable thing and issue an apology to the Council taxpayers of the City of Bristol.
Thank you very much. So that concludes agenda item 10. We move on to agenda item 11, which is the pay policy statement. I'd like to move this report and ask Councillor O'Rourke, as the former Lord Mayor, to second report.
I'm happy to second the report. I'm not going to make a speech, but I would just like to say that there's a lot of really good things in this report, and I would like to thank officers in the HR department. And I would especially like to draw people's attention to the fact that the thorny problem of dealing with interim officers has been something that this Chamber has argued about for many years. I see Richard is over there smiling because I know that's one of his bête noirs for many years. And I think it's worth recognising that the HR committee understood those concerns and that those issues are now in better control with a lot more transparency. And that's something that we should be thankful for. So thanks to all of the officers.
Thank you very much, Paula.
Thanks, Paula, for giving that speech. But this was down as an aye-nay vote, and just to formally move and second. Now, normally this paper's debated every year, so I don't know what's gone wrong this year. As Paula said, there's lots of interesting stuff going on in the HR committee that's been controversial in previous years, and I know Richard's had a problem with it in and now he's happy. but it's not being debated this year, and I don't understand why not when it's been debated every year.
Thank you, Kai. You might want to talk to your party whip, because this was agreed in the meetings beforehand that there wouldn't be a round of speakers. And Paula reserved her remarks with a few extra comments. So if that's okay, we'd like to move on. So the recommendation is shown on the screen and is in the report in your agenda pack. So all those in favour say aye. All opposed say nay. So the recommendation is approved. So there will now be an adjournment for 20 minutes. It's 7:32. So please come back here at 7:52 for our motions. Thank you very much, everyone. Don't forget to sign the cards in the conference room next door. Thank you. Okay, so members, please take your seats. Thank you very much. So in order to hear both the golden motion and the silver motion this evening, we will need to extend the time allocated to hearing motions. So I estimate that in order to hear both, we'll probably be finishing about 9:10. Are members happy to go to that length? Well, let's hear the golden motion and then we'll decide again at that point. Okay. All right, so golden motion is 4 weekly bin collections and cracking down on fly tipping. The motion will be shown on the screen in the room during the proposing speech. I'd like to ask Councillor Renard for the Labour Group to move the motion. You've only got 3 minutes on this occasion, Tom.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's a bit of a waste bonanza today. Our Labour Group is bringing forward this motion to take further steps to address the scourge of fly tipping across this city. Fly tipping causes environmental damage, including contaminating ecosystems, polluting waterways and harming wildlife. It is a public health issue, with hazardous substances and objects posing injury and health risks and decomposing waste attracting pests. Now, I want to share some of the challenges that have been in my ward of Horfield. We've had a few fly tipping hotspots that have attracted many complaints and been the subject of significant work for myself to get them cleared, along with local residents. I just wanted to pick out one to bring this issue to life, never mind the wildlife that have been visiting. Filton Road, opposite Horfield Ledge Centre. We had a long-running battle to repeatedly get it cleared, and then eventually got the clothing bins removed, the main source of that fly tipping. In fact, following visits by journalists and increased public scrutiny, the issue was finally sorted out. Remarkable, really. Albeit after over £1,300 of taxpayer money has been spent repeatedly clearing up the mess. My thanks go to the Neighbourhood Enforcement team for working with me on it, and fingers crossed the situation there will now improve. Under the former Labour administration, we took action on the fines for fly tipping and installed enforcement cameras by fly tipping hotspots. However, we know that more needs to be done. And it is why I was delighted to see an amendment passed at the recent budget meeting, in spite of Green Party opposition, and that amendment will see more funding spent on fly tipping enforcement cameras, an increase in the fine for littering, and more investment into the big tidy, graffiti removal and anti-fly tipping measures to be determined by the Cross-Party Environment Committee. I suppose I should thank you, Lord Mayor, for breaking the tie. Cracking down on fly tipping is a priority for residents across Bristol, particularly those in deprived communities, and we need a zero-tolerance approach. This council needs to put residents' priorities first. Now, back to my favourite topic, bins and recycling. I'm really pleased to see the announcement today that the Green Party are ruling out 4 weekly black bin collections at this time. Interesting though, your amendment ruling it out was tabled prior to the closure of the waste and recycling consultation. Perhaps in hindsight you recognised it should never have been on the table in the first place. Labour have always been clear on our position. We don't support it as a proposed approach. The strength of feeling that there's been on this issue has been huge, to say the least. Petitions, as we've discussed, are a valid expression of opinion on a subject, and were a much-loved tool of the Green Party while they were in opposition. Interesting how attitudes can change when in power. At least you recognise it now. We have always been clear that we will take an approach of a constructive opposition. Where we agree, we will support ideas. Where we don't, we won't. Where possible, we will look to suggest alternative solutions, like we did with the budget. A shame the Green Party threw their toys out the pram and voted all our amendments down. Perhaps my daughter, approaching 3 years old, can show you how to share things nicely. We will and are participating in the committee system. Time to move on from complaining we didn't take policy chairs. We are chairing several regulatory committees, hold vice chairs and are turning up to improve the city for our residents. Show that you're able to collaborate, accept when you get it wrong, and let's get on with the job of making our city a cleaner and more pleasant place to live. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tate, to second the motion, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm proud to second this motion because for too long, residents in areas like mine, areas of high deprivation, have been left to deal with the consequences of fly tipping while their voices go unheard. If we are serious about increasing recycling rates and tackling waste issues, we need to get the basics right. People will recycle more when it's easy and accessible. Yet instead of improving services, this administration was proposing cuts that would only make things worse, pushing more waste onto our streets. At the same time, new food waste legislation is coming in for businesses and schools, yet many schools don't even have proper recycling systems in place. We know that the council could step in, not just to help schools meet their targets, but to harness the power of young people in driving change. We know that pest to power works. When children learn good recycling habits, they take them home, influencing families and communities. We've heard that the 4 weekly black bin collections are now off the table for now, but 3 weekly collections are still on the cards, and we all know what that means. This is not a long-term commitment to keeping waste services at the level residents need. Instead, it's kicking the can down the road. If this administration really wants to build trust, it should give a clear commitment that is not imposed reductions to bin collections that residents do not support. And speaking of listening to residents, the waste consultation was not a meaningful engagement. For one of the biggest issues facing our city, an online survey and a handful of paper copies in libraries simply isn't good enough. Many of the people most affected, particularly those without easy internet access, were not properly reached. We also need to support resident-led solutions, like the young people in BS13 campaigning for supermarket trolley barks to prevent fly tipping. These are the kinds of ideas we should be backing, not ignoring. Instead of pushing ahead with cuts to bin collections, the Council should be investing in better enforcement, education and community-led initiatives. That means ensuring waste services are properly funded, taking real action against fly tipping and making future consultations meaningful and accessible to all residents. I urge our colleagues to support this motion because getting the basics right and listening to residents is the key to real change. Thank you.
Thank you. There has been an amendment from the Conservative Group which was published online as a supplement earlier this afternoon. Councillor Mark Weston of the Conservative Group, if you'd like to move your amendment, please.
Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. Now, I like to be a record-setting councillor. So amongst my many achievements and humble nature, tonight I am moving perhaps the shortest amendment in council history. You're very welcome. If only the speech were as brief. You'd miss me. We are taking the Labour motion. And actually, I do genuinely think we can do a lot better when it comes to waste, and I'll come to that later. But from my perspective, we are adding 2 words. We want the motion to rule out 3 or 4 weekly bin collections. I spend a lot of my time litter picking, going around reporting fly tipping like I'm sure many other people do. And it's terrifying the things that you find when you go around, especially if you're litter picking on a Saturday morning after a Friday night. Some interesting choices have been made in someone's lifestyle. In the middle of Crow Lane, there was a fish and chip wrapper, a bottle of Sauvignon, and a high-heeled shoe. A choice was made right there on Friday night. But moving on. So as we go around and we litter pick and we're doing the fly tipping, one of the problems that I've got in my ward is the council have removed the bins. Because apparently those bins are being abused, which makes it sound like the person that drank the bottle of wine just screamed at them. But what it means is domestic waste was thrown into the bins and it kept getting filled up unless people were genuinely eating raw chicken on the middle of Crow Lane. And so if we move to 3 or 4 weekly bin collections, do we think the amount of domestic waste dumped in our green spaces and on our streets will diminish, or will it go up? Well, it's clearly going to go up. And I think the residents of this city expect a minimum service from our council, and the minimum service they expect is a fortnightly bin collection to collect their rubbish. So I don't think we can, in all good consciousness, reduce that service, take more in tax from them, and give them less. So we move the amendment, exactly as your motion, but add the 3 or 4 weekly. Rule them out. By all means, let's explore other opportunities for improved recycling, for improved waste collection. I think, actually, to be honest, the best way to improve waste collection would be to actually, if the waste company collected it on the day of collection. I just put it out there as an idea. Because at the moment, we're already virtually on a 3 weekly collection. It feels like a part of my ward. And we want to keep the service as it is. So if nothing else, no one can say I'm inconsistent on this approach. The Conservatives don't want to change the system. My Lord Mayor, I move the amendment, and I'm spot on time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Udin to second the amendment, please.
Reserve remark, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. So let's hear from speakers on the amendment. So firstly, Councillor Martin Fodor to speak on behalf of the Green Group.
Thanks very much, Lord Mayor. I rise to comment on this, but as Greens are in favour of a circular economy, there will be some recycled lines that you've heard already today. And not all the jokes are rubbish either. Okay, but I'll carry on. So I am, unfortunately, having to say, I'm disappointed that the Conservatives want to rule out any changes at all to refuse collections. The only thing to improve recycling uptake in a consistent way in this city over the years, over the decades, was going to less frequent waste removal from weekly to fortnightly. That led to a step change that was maintained, unlike some of the publicity campaigns. Of course, people were worried. And as with other councils all over the country doing things, when they changed waste removals, the recycling rate did go up. The service is now well established. We just need to improve it. Every single improvement we'd like to see, and which thousands of residents have been commenting on for the last 6 weeks, a record-breaking consultation. I think the final figure is over 16,500 people who went through the questions. If only you'd referred some more people to those, we might have had even more responses, but instead you referred them to your email collection. So improving services requires investment. Sales of high-quality recyclate, the materials collected by our crews every week, are a key part of funding the service we have. More recycling means selling materials to processors around this country. Very little gets exported. It's processed in this country. And that equals more income for more viable services. And I thought that sort of economic return and that benefit would appeal to you as Conservative councillors, for instance. And more waste, however, equals more disposal costs. And they're going to rise because of the new taxes coming in for carbon impact of recyclable materials left in waste. The more material landfilled or incinerated, the higher the costs to our council, the lower the service will be able to afford. And the loss of resources for businesses around the country who want to use those materials. Anyway, all the extra services we've been consulting people on for extra larger households, people with medical and hygiene waste, people with pets, people who want to recycle soft plastics, people who'd like additional services. They all depend on there being a fund for investment, and that means lower disposal costs. So we know from all over the country that the best recycling rates, this survey of every region in England plus Wales, the best recycling rates are where recycling services are prioritised and invested in, and the worst recycling rates are where the waste collection is most frequent.
Councillor Fode, I need to ask you to finish now. Thank you. No. Time to finish. We have a lot to get through. So let's move on now to Councillor Kai Dudd, speak on behalf of the Labour Group. Councillor Dudd, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you to the Conservative Group for bringing this amendment forward. And I think I agree with you. This is a record-breaking amendment, very, very focused, at least, anyway. So I guess what the question you're asking us is, what do we think of free weekly collections? That's the basic question that this amendment asks, and it's not a new idea. This is something that was pushed under the last administration by officers and Bristol Waste Company year after year, and every time we said no. We didn't think it was a good idea, and that's our belief now still. And it's for several reasons. And one of the main reasons is that it's the most important service this city offers. It's the one service that everybody gets. And many people think it's the only reason they pay their council tax is to get their waste collection. So it's too important to cut the service that people get. The other issue we have with this, obviously there's a saving in the budget that's already been passed. And most of that money has been taken out of the service and it is a saving. So none of the reform of the service is being reinvested back into the service. So that's also a problem with it. Also, I don't have confidence, given the quality of the service at the moment, where the waste company is struggling to collect the bins every 2 weeks and the recycling weekly, that this would be successfully implemented. I think the frontline staff do a fantastic job. I've got no complaint against them. But quite frankly, the service isn't up to standard at the moment. So making this change in that scenario is not right. The other thing is, we've already heard there's loads of other ideas to improve the recycling rates. We have many successful campaigns. Feed My Face, Slim Your Waste was a very successful campaign to increase food waste recycling. We need more of that. So it's on that basis that we support this amendment, because we haven't changed our position. We don't believe free weekly collections are the right thing to do. And none of the information we've seen so far has convinced us to change our position. So we'll be supporting the Mark's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Joss Clark, Liberal Democrat Group.
Thank you very much indeed, Lord Mayor, dear boy. What joy it was to receive your amendment.
At least it didn't take you long to read.
It didn't take long to read. I mean, obviously today has been exciting in terms of, you know, the conversations about waste. I am kind of slightly disappointed that we're doing this, because the consultation has only just finished, and I think that these debates in full council are debating, and we're talking about things that we shouldn't be, but I think that we need to listen to what local residents in Bristol, and we need to take on board their opinions, and preempting I don't think is good for our public image as councillors. And so I think in that respect, both, you know, left and right, is slightly unfortunate that we are here. And I think that your amendment, fantastic as it is, it's really closing down any opportunity for debate. And it's obviously it's disrespecting members of the public who may have an opinion. And they have a right to that opinion. And here we are sort of moving beyond that. And I think that is slightly regrettable. Thank you very much indeed. I won't get many more of those this evening, I'm sure. Moving to the consultation itself, we have a duty as councillors with the task and finish to debate the results when they come in from members of the public, and we need to collate all that information, and we need to move forward. And we also do need to acknowledge what's happening elsewhere in the country. So Bristol is not in a silo, we're not in a bubble. We do also need to see what's happening elsewhere in the country in terms of trends and the way that other people are doing and good practice. So I think to close down any debate and say no to 3 or 4 weekly, and I'm not making any judgment as to whether we should or shouldn't. We also do need to acknowledge that there are some real challenges with people, HMOs, large households, and we do really need to be cognizant of those issues when debating, when talking about bin collection. And I think that, as I said previously in the debate, conversations earlier on, that, you know, Bristol Waste have been delivering a pretty poor service, let's be honest, and this consultation has come at the wrong time, really. We should have got Bristol Waste performing in an appropriate, regular fashion, and then I think it would have been easier for members of the public to have an informed opinion and have a reasoned opinion. And I also the Green Party, and just to say, getting in the national papers, I don't know how you did it, but well done to you, but I wish that press release, the press release should have come from the council, not the Green Party.
Councillor Clark, okay, thanks so much indeed. So, Councillor Weston, would you like to respond as mover of the amendment?
You betcha. Thank you, colleagues, for your warm words of support. I've got to say, it is strange, isn't it? So, the council has always struggled for when our council meetings fall, when it's around consultations, because this is the point at which we can all get together, we can all debate issues. So we are here debating bin collections and various other waste-related things. So, Councillor Clark, when you say that we're trying to shut down 3 or 4 weekly collections as an option, Councillor Fodor, when you were responding earlier to questions, you said there were dozens of options in the debate, in the consultation. So we're talking about closing down 2 options, but you actually ruled 1 out in the press earlier today. So obviously the magic number is only to rule out 1 option, not 2. So that is good to know. At least I now know what that magic number is. The thing is, for me, I'm looking at this from the perspective, we get an absolutely appalling service from the waste company. I dread waste collection day in Henry and Brentry on Thursday and Friday because I know that about half of my ward is going to be missed and it's going to roll. And because we are at the Thursday and Friday, if Friday's missed, it rolls to Saturday. If that's then missed again, well, it's Monday and good luck. So from my perspective, if we go to 3 weekly collection, it won't be 3 weekly, it'll be 3.5, 4 weekly. And that is going to cause all manner of problems, no matter how much the recycling is. I'm sorry, Ed, you can look as perplexed as you want, but genuinely, check out the missed collection routes on Friday and Saturday this week. You'll see it. I do not believe the service we are giving our residents is anywhere near adequate that they will be able to cope with a 3 or 4 weekly bin collection because they don't even get a 2 weekly collection now. It is not going to work to them. They pay their council tax and they expect a minimum service. They expect their waste collected regularly, and I don't think they want to see it done monthly or 28 days or whatever else we're ruling out. Today, I think we need to send a clear message that we support families who are trying to do well. There are other options that can be done to improve recycling. We should definitely do them, but we should also expect the waste company to collect the waste every 2 weeks. And that's what this amendment has done. I'm glad it's got Labour support, and I would urge the rest of you to think on this again. Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Renard, would you like to respond as move the original motion?
Yes, my Lord Mayor. As my colleague Councillor Dudd's already confirmed, we're obviously supporting this amendment to rule out 3 weekly. And I would also start by pointing out that the results are going to get referred to the Environment and Sustainability Policy Committee. So it is about putting this all in the round and in the mix. But now is not the time to be cutting the frequency of black bin collections with all the issues that there are going on in the service. And yes, please let me pass my congratulations on to over 16,500 responses. It's amazing what happens when you table really ridiculous proposals and the residents express their fury. However, I will be interested to read the detail that will come forward in the reports and some of the suggestions that have been put forward. Now, I'm a resident of Council Weston. I live in his ward, and I can attest to the problems that there are with both bins and recycling collection at the moment that leaves recycling not being taken, leaves it strewn all over the streets when it's not been collected as well. It is a real problem and one we need to focus on sorting out. We need to focus on addressing fly tipping. Fly tipping is up, and we need to work with the Bristol Waste Service to get issues addressed. And we heard about cuts to the Bristol Waste Service, but that's not true. The budget went up £7.5 million over 4 years. Might have been changes in how some of that funding is used, and we would make no apology as the Labour Party for making sure our workers are paid properly and paid a living wage. 2 last things I would just like to perhaps point to as well. There are other things that Labour is doing nationally on this. We're really strong on the environment agenda. You can elect Labour into power nationally and get delivery on environmental issues. Deposit return scheme coming in, banning single-use vapes, GB Energy as well. Lots happening. Elect Greens and put them in charge. What we get is bins piling up on the street, rats, fly tipping up, and a failing waste service that has got worse and worse and worse under your watch. Get a grip.
Thank you very much. So now we move to the vote. This will be an e-vote. Please ensure your seats so your vote is recorded accurately. And remember, you are voting on the amendment. And the vote will be open for 15 seconds. Please vote now. Thank you. And the results are in. So that's 26 votes for, 38 against, and no abstentions. So that amendment hasn't been carried. But don't worry, we have another amendment from the Green Group. And this was also published online as a supplement earlier this afternoon. So I'd like to ask Councillor Martin Fodo of the Green Group to move the amendment, please.
Thanks very much, Lord Mayor. Thanks again. It is a circular promoting. There will be some lines recycled again. We're always... Yeah, that's how it goes, round and round. We're always keen to see improvements in the way streets get looked after and that materials get managed. It's part of our election commitment to the city as Greens. With this constructive amendment, we're seeking to make the proposals more practical and better focused compared to the original motion. The recent deterioration of services followed crews being removed in 2023 from bin and recycling services, from street sweeping in suburbs, and from fly tipping crews to respond to fly tipping. That's why there's more of those problems. These cuts had a marked impact on perceptions in the city, as the Quality of Life survey shows. The damage the previous administration caused still needs more work to resolve, to reverse it, and above all, funding to restore the crews. I welcome any practical support colleagues across the Chamber can offer, especially extra investment. I'm sure they applaud the extra 4 mobile video cameras we now have in use, the recent prosecutions of fly tippers, and the thousands of fixed penalty notices issued. If they can get local government funding restored as well, that really would be welcome. I'm sure everyone wants to see a detailed analysis of this record-breaking consultation we've just completed. More people across more wards from more groups have all taken part. The issues raised, the ideas submitted, and the preferences shown will now be explored by the new cross-party task and finish group. They also have to look at the new costs the government has added from national insurance, the new carbon tax coming, the extra responsibilities we have to build into the service before the next contract starts in 2027. If we don't raise recycling rates and income and cut waste costs, the service will keep suffering. We need to find evidence of how extra penalty fines might change behaviour if they can be collected. We need to catch more rogue businesses who cause more fly tipping. Sadly, putting unsupervised skips around the city would be an invitation to these cowboys. In the finance scrutiny meeting in webcast in January, and I mention this because it's on the record, I pointed out that most of the modelling we carried out explores the benefits of 3 weekly collections as a bin service and enhanced recycling collections every week across the whole city for homes. The new service tailored to specific household needs. We'd like to offer larger house...
20 seconds.
Sure. Hygiene products, pet services and so on. I'd like to... it was compared to 2 and 4 weekly, of course. I can reassure people that we don't want to take forward 4 weekly. We want to push for 3. I'm delighted so many people took part and gave us their considered comments and preferences. We're now going to be analysing those in the cross-party task and finish group. It'll be meeting, as they all do, and then reporting in public to the committee.
Okay.
I encourage everyone to support this amendment.
Thank you very much. You must learn to practice 3 minutes. Okay, so Councillor Finch, to second the amendment, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank Labour for bringing this motion. We've heard from residents again and again that fly tipping is a big concern and that getting our waste and recycling services collected right is vital. So finding innovative ways to address these issues is definitely needed. We're already seeing positive changes for these issues under the new committee system. The Fix My Street app is now integrated, making it easier for people to report fly tipping and track the progress of those reports. And we've had a record-breaking 16,500 responses to the consultation on waste and recycling, which closed last night. I hope everyone here agrees that we would be letting the people of Bristol down if we oversimplify this issue for the sake of political point scoring. So I hope that Labour has brought this motion in the spirit of working together to find creative solutions and not for the headlines. And it's in that spirit of working together that we bring this constructive amendment. Many people won't know that disposing of Bristol's black bin wastes costs the city money, but recycling actually makes money which can then be used for better services. We also need to increase our recycling rate from 45% to 65% by 2035 to meet new government targets. This, in combination with rising costs, means there's a real challenge on our hands, but it's also an opportunity to aim for a higher recycling rate and a better service overall.
The service affects everyone in Bristol, and we need to make sure we're hearing and taking account of everyone's needs. That includes people living in large households, people who are disabled, people with young children, including those using disposable nappies, people who use adult nappies and hygiene products, and people living in flats, to name a few. The consultation on waste and recycling asked specific questions about how changes would affect people with a whole range of needs and circumstances. Now, the new cross-party working group can use this wealth of responses to ensure our future service meets people's needs, safeguards against rising costs, and improves our recycling rate. I'd like to end with an example. Since being elected, I can't tell you the number of times residents have raised the issue of recycling blowing out of recycling boxes and littering the streets week after week, as well as the brittle boxes getting broken. In the cross-party group, we'll be looking at alternatives to the current recycling boxes. For example, large, strong, sealable sacks that will last and keep the recycling in. This is one way we could change our recycling service for the better and tackle street litter at the same time. It's not a simple issue, and there is no simple answer, but I'm looking forward to working with councillors from all parties to find creative solutions to improve our service for the people of Bristol and for the planet. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll now hear from speakers on the amendment. Firstly, Councillor Collard for the Labour Group.
So I was going to do as Mark Weston suggested earlier and keep this speech brief, but he spoke for quite a while. I don't intend to. So I want to keep this speech brief because I really want to hear the Lib Dem motion this evening, preferably before 10 o'clock. In this amendment, I think there's a lot of fluff. Most of it isn't really necessary. A little bit of misinformation too. The Bristol waste budget in 23-24 was 42.7 million. Such a lot of money. In 2025-26, it was increased to 46.6 million. Now, you don't have to be a maths wizard to see that this is actually an increase of almost £4 million a year. You also don't have to have the memory of an elephant to remember it was only 2 weeks ago that the Greens voted against a budget amendment to install new fly tipping enforcement cameras. I want to thank the Lib Dems and the Conservative councillors for their support on this, overruling the Greens to pass a common sense policy. We want to go further, and the motion does that. The Greens amendment doesn't add any new ideas of their own, although I am really excited about the new task and finish committee thing that's going on. Instead, it takes issue in the fact that the petition talks about monthly bin collections instead of 4 weekly. I ain't going to argue the toss over this. It's monthly in 11 of the 12 months of the year. Whether it's 12 or 13 collections a year, it's certainly not the 26 collections our residents are usually used to receiving. The amendment also talks about the results of the consultation. The Greens submitted this amendment before the consultation even closed. They passed a budget that included 1 million savings from reduced waste collection weeks ago, so this reference to listening to the consultation is a bit cheeky at best. Their minds were obviously made up before it was closed. Padding aside, there's only one thing in the amendment that actually matters. This will all go back to a policy committee for approval anyway, that the Greens only want to rule out 4 weekly collections at this time. The mask slips. Why would it be needed unless they plan to introduce 4 weekly bin collections at some point in the future? My residents don't want 4 weekly collections ruled out at any time. They want it ruled out for good. Myself and Richard, we quite often get emails constantly throughout the week for bins that have been missed, collections that have been missed.
20 seconds.
Fly tipping. So I encourage councillors to vote against this amendment and vote for Labour's original amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Gooch, Liberal Democrats, please.
Thank you. This amendment adds additional relevant content and information to the motion. It's right to point out that improvements have been made to fix my street, additional fly tipping cameras have been installed, and that reducing bin collections from weekly to fortnightly has increased recycling rates previously.
It's also right to point out that it was the previous Labour administration that cut 700,000 from street cleansing and fly tipping, the same party that's now suddenly woken up and realised that street cleansing and fly tipping is an issue. This amendment also grounds the motion in reality. The fact is that there has been a consultation out asking residents for their views on the topic, which this motion seeks to undermine. There's nothing wrong with asking for residents' views before making decisions. It's regrettable that the consultation went out amidst the fallout in recycling collection failures, recycling, not bin failures, it was recycling collection failures that we've been having problems with, and that they were caused by the funding cuts of the previous administration. But we are where we are, so we may as well allow the Task and Finish group to look in detail at the results of the consultation and address the issues raised by the motion. Finally, the amendment highlights yet another financial threat, with the government set to introduce a carbon tax on waste through the emission trading scheme that could cost our city millions. It is imperative that we get our recycling rates up. We may have the highest recycling rates amongst the core cities in England, but our neighbours in South Wales are putting us to shame, with many areas having already surpassed the 65% recycling rate that we aim to reach. The amendment crucially also calls on the government to afford local authorities extra funding to cover yet another additional burden that this Labour government is imposing on local authorities.
Thank you very much. Now, it says in my script, Councillor Mark Weston speak on behalf of the Liberal Democrat group. I think that might be a typo, Mark. So, unless you're about to tell us something tonight, something interesting.
My God, the nightmare of Lent. Just when I was already quivering at the slim my waist option, and now God, I don't want to break out in liberalism. Anyway, mind boggles. Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor. I promise colleagues it's my last time speaking today. Yay! Easy, Tiger, easy. Right, we will be supporting the amendment, if only because it does actually rule out 4 weekly bin collections, which is good. Again, I do find it strange that us trying to rule out the move to 3 weekly bin collections bad, you ruling out 4 weekly collections good. It does. There is an issue on that one. Yeah, a few of you are nodding. You've pointed that. The amendment is helpful in some regards. It does point out the additional hazards that have been pointed out. You know, the additional NIC costs that we're going to get. The skip scheme idea. It's a nice idea, and it's something used to happen in the past. I do worry about who would use that. Because I'm fairly confident that it will be a lot of the people that are causing our fly tipping would suddenly dump in it, and actually we should be prosecuting them rather than letting them dump it for free. But I do take the strategic skip approach, and I think it can be used possibly in the right sense, so we'd like to see that. I guess bring on the consultation, let's bring on the discussions, but from our point of view, we'll vote for this today because it rules out the 4 weekly, but really we don't want to move it to 3 weekly either. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fodor, would you like to respond as move the amendment?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll keep it brief. People would have a rubbish opinion of me if I kept it going and missed the silver motion. So I've been the longer version. So you fund Bristol Waste, you take the money out, then you find some money for it in the budget, but you also find another budget amendment that was taking money out to pay for school meals. So I think it's a circular economy you've got as well in mind. But we've had a wonderful consultation. I appreciate all the comments that have been made. We want to get more food waste recycled. We want to help larger households. We want to have better containers for waste that don't cause litter. We've got lots of options to evaluate in the Task and Finish group. In real terms, the service will keep having a smaller budget if it doesn't find investment and if it doesn't have more income from recycling. So we want to promote recycling above all. So I'll keep it brief there and do encourage everyone to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fodor. Okay, and Councillor Rowland, would you like to respond as move the original motion?
I'll try not to tell any recycling jokes. Hopefully you'll bring that talent to sorting out the recycling service that's falling apart at the moment. Now, There's a few things I just want perhaps to offer the Liberal Democrats. Perhaps you'd like to join your coalition partners on the administration's benches as stalwarts of defending them with this amendment and with the last one. What we've also seen is fly tipping is significantly up. I think I understand it, there'll be 1,900 more fly tipping incidents in the same quarter a year ago. So, you know, there's one statistic we're clearly providing issues. The previous administration invested in the service, and this will sound like a broken record, I do apologise, £7.5 million increase in the budget over 4 years. That's a significant uplift. Difficult choices did have to be made within how that money is used, but we have invested in the service, not cut it. We need a more carrot and a less stick approach. I don't want to end up with seeing mouldy carrots all over the place being feasted upon by rats across the city. And I would remind you that with the extended producer responsibility, that gave an extra £7.467 million, largely to be spent on Bristol's waste services. Where's that money gone? Did you put that in the Bristol waste budget and then take the equivalent out, or are you actually going to invest more in the services? Perhaps it's you that's been cutting services in the city. And I would remind colleagues as well, over £27 million was the net improvement in Bristol City Council's budget for the coming financial year, net of things like employers' national insurance. It's a significant uplift, and what Labour has committed to is a multi-year funding settlement going forward, and we'll see what the outcome of that is following the spending review. Labour are committed to sorting out local government funding, clearing up the mess that the Tories left after 14 years. Yes. That won't be dealt with overnight. It will take time, but Labour are getting on with the job, not spending their time moaning. I think the other thing I would just like to... thought you'd enjoy that one. So I think the other thing I just wanted to thank Councillor Abby Finch for your speech, got some really interesting points raised. And I think the other thing is about that what makes money point is really interesting, isn't it? Because I think I met the managing director of Bristol Waste not too long ago. He was talking to me about that fact that it's sorted at the curbside. They can sell it to make far more money than if you start chucking it all in one dry mixed recycling box. So we will need to be innovative. We need to think about the impacts. But we won't be supporting this amendment, and the reason we're not supporting this amendment is because it waters down our original amendment at this time. Rule it out categorically. And just, Councillor Fodor, to perhaps give you a right of reply, I invite you again to commit that the Task and Finish group will meet in public and not behind closed doors. Will you make that commitment today? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we move to the vote. Another e-vote in your allocated seats. You're voting on the amendment, and the vote will be open for 15 seconds. Please vote now. Okay, so that's 44 votes for, 20 against, and no abstentions. So that amendment has been carried. Thank you. So we will now hear from speakers on the motion as amended, and feel free to curtail your speeches if you wish. So firstly, Councillor Martin Fodor for the Green Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I was going to recycle some lines, but I don't feel the need to, because we've had a very thorough debate, and I really appreciate all the comments everyone's making. There are just a few really important points to make. We do have to make the service viable in the long term. That means cutting escalating waste disposal costs and increasing recycling income, as has just been acknowledged. We have high-quality material in the city. We want to keep it going to market and get the material in the black bins that's recyclable out. So we have more food waste processed, more metal, more plastic, and so on. So we want to introduce new services, and we need that investment. Just a caution when we're talking about fly tipping. There is virtually no correlation at all between the cost of bulky waste disposal, the frequency of bins being emptied, and the amount of fly tipping. Fly tipping comes mainly from cowboys, waste criminals, people where we don't check the paperwork and believe they're going to do something with the material, and it ends up at the side of the road. We do need to catch more fly tippers, and that's why we've got more mobile cameras, and I am glad we're going to have other cameras available as well for that. So let's support this motion as it stands now and go forward in making the waste services and material recycling fit for a circular economy future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peat for the Labour Group, please.
Every time the Greens and Lib Dems speak, they make excuses. They've been in charge now for nearly a year, and yet they fail to step up to the challenge. They want you to believe that their actions and their decisions are all Labour's fault. But it's time for the truth. Under Labour, Bristol waste funding increased every single year, totalling to an additional 7.5 million between 2021 and 2025. Under Labour, next year we will get another 7.4 million because we believe in the principle that the polluter should pay. And under Labour, there will be an additional 27 million to uplift council services. So tell me, where are the cuts? Where is the shortfall? Where is the funding crisis that they're talking about? Because it's not here and not under Labour. It's under the Green and Lib Dem administration. They just passed a budget that will cut 500,000 to Bristol Waste this year, 500,000 next year, and then 1 million annually. So it's no surprise they didn't vote to keep the fortnightly bin collections. Their budget was always modelled off a reduced service. It was badged as a changes to non-recyclable waste collection, but that's just a clever way to avoid saying the truth, which is that they've always planned to cut bin collection. So if they want to talk about cuts, let them talk. But they should talk about who's actually making them, because it's not us and it's certainly not the Labour government. Rightly so, bin collection has been the focus of tonight. 2 weeks ago, I showed to this chamber the truth about fly tipping in Bristol, with real photos from my ward, as we put forward a fully costed budget amendment that would deter and punish those that fly tip. And yet the Greens voted against our proposals. So I'm back here again to give them one last chance to do the right thing. There is nothing residents want more than a council that prioritises waste services, recycling and fly tipping. The measures outlined in this motion are common sense and reasonable. I suggest that everyone can see this. The amendment passed with the coalition's votes waters down the commitment our motion gave. Instead of ruling out 4 weekly bin collection for good, 4 weekly bin collection is just ruled out for now. And we should all note that the potentially mind-boggling 3 weekly bin collection is still regrettably on the table. Bristolians have spoken, over 12,000 of them, and they demand ruling out 4 weekly bin collections for good. It's a shame that the Greens have a policy to not vote for anything that comes from a councillor. Okay, sorry. After all, it was your party that campaigned for a collaborative system. That being said, this motion is still one that we're proud of. The measures to tackle fly tipping are sorely needed, and most importantly, this forced the Greens to ditch their plans for 4 weekly bin collections, so we will be supporting the amended motion and fight in the policy committees to prevent 3 weekly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Tim Kent for the Liberal Democrat Group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. So we welcome the debate. Many of us are sceptical of calls for 4 weekly or even 3 weekly bin collections. But I look forward to examining the evidence and issues in the working group. I personally do not think a change will get support. But I do want to see that evidence, and I want the working group to see that evidence. A working group, by the way, that we proposed several months ago. It's a shame we're still debating its setting up now. It should have been working months on this. It should be months into its work by now. But I also want to talk about fly tipping, because this is a particular bugbear of mine. So over the last 10 years, we have seen reports of fly tipping increase by 63%. Over 10,000 reports every year in Bristol alone. This is a sad legacy left for us by the former Labour administration, something they should all be ashamed of. Everyone is sick to death of the fly tipping in their community. We do need to come up with an effective strategy to reduce this. Clearly, the council has failed up to now. But I also want to talk about how we, as a council, clear away fly tipping, because we're failing at that. So the motion talks about improving the target from 72 hours to 48 hours. Welcome that, that'd be great. But let's not believe that we actually hit the 72-hour target. So on my way to this meeting today, I drove past a load of builders' rubble in Whitchurch, dumped on the street. I went to report it, but then looked in Fix My Street. It had been reported 10 days before. There was a big long conversation between the council and the people reporting it. Guess what? It's still there. It's there, the corrugated concrete roofing, dumped on the pavement, turning to dust, possibly, of course, with asbestos in it. No one has removed it 10 days on. It is not good enough. So let's talk about fly tipping on housing department land, because now we're into a whole new domain. I'm sure every councillor here has tried to remove fly tipping on housing department land. And those conversations don't go on for days, they don't go on for weeks, they go on for months. And we're all just bloody fed up of it. So we need to have one system where we report the fly tipping and it gets removed. And we also need to put more into enforcement, more into tracking down who's doing this, and more increasing fines and action against people who do the fly tipping. Because we're all just bloody fed up of it, to be perfectly honest. So I'm happy to back this motion, but I do hope we all think hard about what's caused this massive rise in fly tipping, what we can do to reduce it, and how we as a council can ensure we clear fly tipping quickly for the sake of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Galandris for the Conservative Group.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Well, what a rubbish evening we're having, eh? I did wonder whether to say very little or whether to pour a bit of petrol on the fire, get some real recycling going. Anyhow, at the budget meeting just a few weeks ago, there were phrases, and these are recycled phrases which I've heard again today. Greens do things differently. Greens do things properly. We listen to the public and respond to what the public want, except petitions, of course. Well, tonight, barely a few weeks later, I've been so sadly disappointed. My green-tinted spectacles have been cruelly ripped off. Oh, yes, they've gone. Look, gone. The green message on bins is clear and cruel. Ignore the simple fact that most Bristolians are quite happy with 2 weekly black bin collections and instead terrify Bristolians with the thought of 4 weekly black bin collections. Horrendous images of mountains of waste piling up, rats patrolling our streets, and then, like a benevolent Deus Ex Machina, alias Councillor Fodor, to then say, 3 weekly bin collections, as if it's a major improvement, a generous compromise. That's not doing things differently or properly. That's straight out of the Donald Trump playbook of political thuggery.
Why not call the Liberals?
J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, and all the folks at Mar-a-Lago, Florida salute you. Well, Bristolians are not stupid or gullible. They will not be impressed by this vacuous transatlantic-style political theatre. They will also wonder how proper it is. They will wonder how proper it is to cut the waste budget before the results of the consultation have been assessed. How can you possibly respond to what people in Bristol want when you've already cut the budget and made up your minds? If you really want to make Bristol clean and green and great again, by all means, look at all the recycling alternatives. Look at innovative ways of recycling. But please keep the 2 weekly black bin collections. Thank you.
OK, Councillor Renard, follow that. Councillor Renard, please respond as moved with the motion. Thank you.
Not really sure how to follow that. Thank you for your speech. I will make a final few comments, got that opportunity, and maybe I will get through this speech without anyone repeatedly trying to interrupt the Labour speakers. It's just a bit rude, so please give us that.
Councillor Francis, please. Councillor Francis, if you could please refrain from interrupting. Thank you. We need to hear from the speakers. Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Now, there's a claim that there's no links between fly tipping and black bin collection frequency. I would suggest a field trip to Conwy Council. They went to 4 weekly, fly tipping went up there. And so residents are right to be concerned about the impacts of reducing the frequency of black bin collections. We will participate in the task and finish group. We will hear the evidence and the views of residents, and we'll also represent the views that we have received and the concerns that residents have. This consultation was a ruse. 4 weekly was probably there so you could get 3 weekly through. That would match your budget cut that you have put in the budget. It's time to accept perhaps actually our claims of predetermination really are true, and that's how residents are feeling across the city, because they see yet again politicians making decisions, but they've already decided the outcome that they want to see. Last couple of points I would make, and I'd really echo, Councillor Kent, what you said about how long it takes to clear fly tipping, and it is hugely frustrating. The one I was talking about earlier on Filton Road, outside the Inn on the Green pub, it's been week after week since last summer. There's been weekly reports of regular issues. It's only when the journalists start turning up, actually, there's a bit of interest, that finally it got sorted and the clothing bins disappeared, which were causing the issue. So I'll leave my comments there. I want to make one final invitation to Councillor Fodor, though. The task and finish group should meet in public. It would provide an opportunity for other local authorities across the country and other people that are interested to be able to learn from that consideration and that high response rate that we've had. I invite you again to take the opportunity to commit that the task and finish group will meet in public and we'll get some of that transparency that you all promised on those benches in your manifesto prior to the local elections last year. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much. So we now move to the vote. As always, ensure you're in your allocated seats and you're voting on the motion, and the vote will be open for 15 seconds. Please vote now. I'm not going to do a Donald Trump impression. That was unanimously approved, so well done. The golden motion has passed. It's not 9 o'clock, it's 8:48. If we can get the silver motion done very quickly by 9, is everyone happy to proceed? We just curtail the speeches. I think that's a yes. Okay, let's get on with the silver motion in that case, which is on the Young Carers Day. So the motion will be shown on the screen in the room during the proposing speech. Councillor Andrew Brown, Liberal Democrat Group, would you like to move them? Please feel free to keep your comments brief.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Now for something completely different, and hopefully this will bring some unanimity to the Chamber. We talk a lot in this Chamber about the children we are responsible for, and rightly so. And we also talk a lot about our role in the social care of people in this city. And again, rightly so. But what we don't talk about as much, either here or in society as a whole, is the role of those who care for partners, relatives and friends, often unseen, generally unsupported and largely unthanked. But unpaid carers are an invisible army, making daily sacrifices to support those that they love. And amongst these are the young carers, thrust into caring at formative times of their lives, taking on added responsibility at a time when they should be learning, growing and finding their way in the world. So this is a simple motion for us as councillors and as a council to acknowledge all those children and young people who find themselves caring for others, and to recognise that they are first and foremost children and young people with all the needs and challenges that others their age face. By signing the Young Carers Covenant, we will be committing to actions to identify and support them, ensuring that they have access and support to education, employment and training, that they can feel safe and secure, and that they should not take on inappropriate and excessive caring duties, that those should be identified and suitable help found. As a council, we can work with the as a council, we can work with the city schools and colleges to ensure that they can play their part. Essentially, these institutions are well placed to assist in identifying our young carers, opening up the opportunity to support them. Now, much of this work already happens, and there's a lot of good stuff going on. But there is always more that can be done. And we know that the number of known young carers in the city, around 500, probably only represents 10 to 15% of the real number. So there's much more that can be done to identify those that we don't already know about. So the challenge that this motion presents us, and as a chamber, is to do what we can to support the collective and indeed individual, I don't know what this is, raise the profile of young carers, celebrate them, support them, but most of all, thank them. And when it comes to Young Carers Day, do look out for resources. There's Young Carers Day activities going on. There's a podcast from the Young Carers Support Group. There's the Invisible Army have an exhibition on it at RWA. Look out for activities around the city, in your wards, and find ways to support and help these young people. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Classic to second the motion, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Keep this brief because although this is an incredibly important topic, my colleague has already summed up a lot of the points that we wish to make. This motion is to help an incredibly vulnerable but also very important group of children in our city. And great work is already happening, but by signing the Young Carers Covenant and strengthening awareness in our schools, we can help these young people thrive, ensuring they are recognised not just for their caring responsibilities but for their potential. I really urge all members in this chamber to support our motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Izzy Russell for the Green Group.
Can I say sat down? Okay. Thank you to the Lib Dems for submitting this motion, recognising and supporting such a vulnerable group. This demographic are often left forgotten, and with continuing austerity, an underfunded NHS and a failing mental health support system, caring responsibilities often fall on family, including children. Even today, we have seen Labour government choosing to cut PIP, NHS funding and staff. I can't imagine how many more vulnerable people they are putting at risk, how many young people will be forced to become unpaid carers for their own family while the rich continue to hoard wealth. I myself have lived experience as a young carer and know firsthand how caring responsibilities can take a toll on a young person, how much time and energy is reserved for responsibilities and stresses that most young people don't even have to consider. How much time in a child's life could be spent learning or playing or being creative, being a child. I am grateful that the Liberal Democrats were so open to suggestions and collaboration. For example, our councillor Christine Townsend pushed to include a section on lobbying national government to make young carers a new category of pupil premium. We call on the Labour government to make real commitments and change to support vulnerable young people. Greens will be voting for this motion, and I hope that everybody else in this room does too.
Thank you very much. Councillor Martin for the Labour Group, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Last weekend I spoke at a Pentecostal church in my ward at an event about adapting child safeguarding policy for ethnic communities. I was glad to see this motion come forward and have another opportunity to discuss increasing our support for young people and young adults. Raising awareness for and supporting young carers is essential. As Kirsty McHugh, the CEO of Carers Trust, has said, it takes on average 3 years for a young carer to be identified for support, and some care for more than 10 years without help. This is why it's crucial that adult social care and health professionals work with children's services to identify young carers as early as possible. Young people should not bear such heavy responsibilities caring for parents or siblings with disabilities or health problems without support. The fact that many young carers go unnoticed, managing these duties alone with little outside help, is heartbreaking. Last year, the No Wrong Doors for Young Carers Memorandum of Understanding had a much-needed update, emphasising the need for consistency across local authorities in fulfilling their duties by the Care Act 2014 and the Children Act 1989. It also states that integrated care boards should be signatories because of the increasing evidence of the health impacts that caring has on young people's health and well-being. I've seen firsthand the disruption that being a young carer can cause to one's education. When I worked as a SEN teaching assistant in a Bristol secondary school, I supported a student who juggled school and caring for his younger siblings with disabilities. For him, the pressures of home life often overshadowed his schoolwork. He was passionate about martial arts, and when focused, he was among the brightest in the class. But for much of the time, he wasn't focused, and he'd act out without really caring if I or the teacher noticed. On many occasions, he'd inevitably get sent out, missing out on classes and socialising. But despite the challenges, being a young carer can also be a valuable learning experience. At Young Carers Action Days, young carers have shared positive stories, and it's important to highlight them. One spoke about how caring for her family led to her join a Young Carers Council, which helped her build the confidence to step outside her comfort zone. Her experience led her to train as a nurse, and she now values the life skills she's gained. The skills and knowledge I've learned have been life-changing, she said, and I take them with me everywhere I go. She also warned against stereotyping young carers and how the prevalence of poorer grades is always talked about and how young carers can feel written off before they've even started. We all have duties as adults to be aware of the statistics without letting it affect what we believe young carers are likely to achieve. The Labour Group will support this motion, which asks the Children and Young People's Committee to sign up to the Carers Trust Young Carers Covenant and work with schools to raise awareness of young carers for both staff and pupils. While I would welcome more detail on implementing a support system for young carers, I agree with the general principle, and these could be worked out at the Children and Young Persons Committee at the relevant time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Michelat for the Conservative Group, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Most of the things in my speech have already been mentioned, so I won't repeat what's already been said. I'd like to thank Councillor Brown for bringing this motion to full council, and the Conservative Group will support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Brown, would you like to respond as mover of the motion?
I would just like to thank the other speakers for their contributions and their support and reserve my remarks.
Thank you very much. Let's move to the vote. So this will be an e-vote. You're voting on the motion. It will be open for 15 seconds. Please vote now. And the silver motion was also unanimously passed. So thank you very much. That concludes the silver motion. So thank you very much for attending today's meeting, which is my last meeting as chair of the council. I'm going to go and lie down in a darkened room now. But just to say, the next meeting for council will be held on Tuesday, the 13th of May. Thank you very much.